Hi, this is Devang. So today we are meeting for a revision of your entire subject of EIS, Enterprise Information System, that is your CA intermediate subject from the second group. And we have done the entire subject of EIS, total 5 chapters in the subject, and right now we are starting revision of all 5 chapters. Total 5 lectures, 5 sessions I will be taking. This session is my lecture number 1. This is for the revision of the first chapter that we had started. Every lecture will be a separate chapter revision. This lecture is for revising the first chapter we started. Well, the first chapter we had started was chapter number 3, that is information systems and its components. So we'll be starting with the revision of this chapter first, that is information systems and its components. Now, what was there in this chapter? Well, first of all, the basic coverage of the entire chapter. In this chapter, we covered total 5 topics like these. Number 1, information system components. Components as in what all things are needed, what all different components are needed in order to create an information system. But for that matter, first of all, what is information system? Well, simple. Information system is a system of distributing information. Like, how does an academy distribute timetable information to its students? Either through the website or through WhatsApp or by putting it on the notice board. This is information distribution. Well, information system means the system of distributing information. Now, under that, we learn information system components first, okay? Then information system controls. Components were the things that are needed to create an information system. Then information system controls means different restrictions that are supposed to be put in your system in order to ensure that the system runs correctly without errors. Information system audit. Audit is to check whether those controls are working perfectly or not. Audit trail is a continuation of that, and organization structure was one last corner topic in the chapter. Well, starting with the first one, components of information system. Total 5 components in my information system. These 5 things are the things needed in order to set up an information system. Number 1, people, means the employees or the user of the information system. Well, nothing more to discuss in that. Then hardware, the things that you can see and touch. No, better words, hardware are those components which are all physical components of your information system, that is computers, or 4 categories we had divided. We'll see that further. Software, also called as program, also called as applications. All 3 terms have the same meaning, please remember. Software, programs, applications, all 3 of them have the exact same indication, same meaning. Then data, under which we also learned about database management system. And the last component, network. Well, the first one that I discuss here in detail, hardware. Hardware components we had discussed by creating one diagram. I'll directly revise that diagram for you. Hardware components we discussed under this diagram. First of all, hardware components had 4 categories: input devices, output devices, processing devices, and storage devices. Out of which input devices, output devices, nothing to revise. Input means the user gives to the computer. Output means the computer gives something back to the user, results or answers given by the computer. Okay? Processing devices had covered only one item. Processing, there is only one device which does the processing. Who does the processing? Well, only one device that does the processing, that is the CPU. But in order to do that processing, CPU itself contains 3 components. CPU contained 3 things within, that is control unit, arithmetical and logical unit, and registers. Well, control unit controls the flow of data. Look at this. Control unit will bring data from hard disk to the RAM for the CPU to do the processing, and control unit will also take the output from CPU to the output devices. Control unit controls the flow of data, while ALU, arithmetical and logical unit, does the actual processing work. ALU does the actual calculations work. Now, what kind of calculations can a CPU perform? CPU can perform only two types of work. Remember, arithmetical work and logical work. Arithmetics covers addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Logical calculation covers greater than, less than, equal to. Any kind of computer system can perform only these 7 operations. Yes, that operations are done by the ALU part of the CPU. Yeah. Third component under the CPU was registers. Registers are small storage device inside the CPU. Yes, inside the CPU. It is very small microscopic storage inside the CPU, that is called as registers. Well, for that registers, to learn that registers, let us learn other storages also. So within your hardware components, you have input devices, processing devices, storage devices, and output devices. Input devices, output devices, I said we are not revising. Processing devices we just did. Now storage devices. Well, this diagram I had made to describe all the storage inside the computer. The main storage inside your computer, the main storage which contains all the data, all the programs for a long-term basis, that storage was which one? That storage was the hard disk. Hard disk is the main storage inside your computer. But another important storage required was RAM. Remember, what is the need for RAM? Well, CPU will access the data lying in the RAM. RAM was like the working table of the CPU. RAM is a temporary storage. RAM is a volatile storage. Remember what was volatile? Volatile means that if you cut the power, then the data will be lost. So RAM is a temporary storage. RAM is a volatile storage. RAM is very fast in giving data to the CPU. CPU can access data from the RAM very fast. This is basically some features about the RAM. Now, why do we need the RAM? Because every time CPU will need some data, every time when the CPU needs the data, where is the data originally located? In the hard disk. Now from the hard disk, the data will come to the RAM. CPU will process that data lying in the RAM. For example, if I had 9 GB movie file in my hard disk, then to play that movie, out of that 9 GB, parts of the file, 1 GB comes to the RAM, and CPU will process that 1 GB from the RAM. CPU will process that 1 GB in the RAM. Okay, what happened? Just a moment. Yes, please. CPU will process that 1 GB data lying in the RAM. Now CPU will process that 1 GB from the RAM, such that once the data is converted into video, video is given out to the output devices, and then once that 1 GB video has been played, CPU will bring another 1 GB from that hard disk. This is how the systems worked. One most important difference between hard disk and RAM was that hard disk allows sequential access while RAM allows random access. Now what was that? Remember, sequential access means that when the CPU needs some data from the hard disk, it will have to sequentially search through each of the part of the hard disk. While RAM allows random access, meaning that CPU can pick up any data from any location of the RAM without searching through every part of the RAM. I might have given you example like say the table on which I am working. My working table is my RAM, but I also have a cupboard in my room. That cupboard contains all my stuff. That cupboard contains 6 shelves inside. Much big cupboard is that. That cupboard becomes my hard disk. Whenever I need some stuff, I will first search on my table. and my table is my RAM. I know where have I put things on my table. I know that my pen is at this part of the table. I know that my water bottle is at the bottom of the table. So I know where are things on my table. I remember that so that I can access them from any part of the table easily. This was called as random access. While sequential access means that in the cupboard is like my hard disk. In the cupboard there are 6 shelves. So it is a huge storage, huge. Dekho, it has around 300 GB of storage. Now out of that huge storage, when I want some item from the cupboard, I do not know where is that item kept in the cupboard. So I will have to sequentially search through each part of the cupboard. I need to search them from each part of the cupboard, from each shelf of the cupboard, each shelf one after another. I will search. That becomes my sequential search. Yes, so hard disk allows sequential access, RAM allows random access. Well, so that covers hard disk, RAM. One more device of storage, just like RAM, that is my cache memory. Cache memory is just like RAM. It is also temporary. It is also storing the data that is currently being processed by the CPU. But the difference is that cache memory might be located nearer to the CPU, mostly even mounted on the CPU itself, and cache memory is much more faster than the RAM. It is much faster than the RAM because it is based on a much advanced technology, but it is much more expensive than the RAM. Yeah, that is my cache memory. And the next one, CPU registers. CPU registers are what? CPU registers are the storage spaces inside your CPU. It is very small microscopic storage space inside the CPU such that this is the place where CPU will again store the data that it is processing. But it is very small microscopic storage space inside the CPU becomes the CPU registers. Now you had learnt 4 different types of registers, 3 important ones. Number 1, accumulators. Accumulators are the registers that will keep the track of some running totals. Second was storage, say address registers. Address registers will store the addresses of memory locations of RAM. Address registers will store the addresses of RAM locations. How would that help the CPU? Well, because of address registers, CPU can access any location of the RAM. Yeah. And third was storage registers. Well, I said that storage registers is like my pocket, because whenever I don't need something, I can put it in my pocket so that I can easily access it from the pocket whenever I need. So registers are the storage inside the CPU. Fourth one was miscellaneous registers for any other things. Another important storage here was virtual memory. Now this was important, this was interesting. Virtual, the word virtual means artificial. Now we had this word virtual at many places in the subject. In fact, this was the first place where we saw the word virtual. What was virtual? In general, the word virtual means artificial. In general, wherever you see the word virtual, means you are trying to fool someone, means you are trying to fool someone or something. Like in this case, virtual memory is a part of the hard disk that is defined as if it was a RAM. So whom am I fooling? Well, virtual memory is a concept here where I fool the CPU. I am fooling the CPU. I'm trying to fool the CPU to believe that this part is also to be used as if it was a RAM. So if I have 3 GB RAM, actual real RAM, and I create 5 GB virtual memory, and if I over and above that I create 5 GB virtual memory, then this 5 I create 5 GB virtual memory, then this 5 GB virtual memory along with 3 GB of original RAM, now the CPU will feel as if it has 8 GB of RAM. Yes, this becomes your virtual memory. Virtual means artificial, memory means RAM. Virtual memory is your artificial RAM. Okay, so that covers majority of our storage devices. One more storage device we had, that was ROM. ROM is read only memory. Well, in your computer at certain places there are memory chips like ROM, which is read only memory. Read only memory means this is the storage from which you can only read the data. Read matlab you can only get the data, you cannot add data to this storage, you cannot edit, you cannot change, you cannot delete data from the ROM. Nobody can delete data in the ROM. Then who put the data into the ROM? Well, it was put by the manufacturer. The manufacturer himself put the data into the ROM. That becomes your permanent 100% permanent storage. It contains certain basic programs, basic necessity programs that are needed by the CPU to run the computer. Yeah. Okay, so that covers our hardware components, storage devices. Next component we cover, that is software components. Acha, before I go on, one suggestion for you, like if you are watching this revision sessions, then I suggest that you watch these sessions by keeping my book open on your desk. You keep my book open, you might have done the highlighting and the diagrams and all that I had discussed in class. Keep them open, that will help you recollect better. I might not show all pages of the book on screen. I will be focusing on the revision of important things only. Yeah, but you keep your books open over there. Next component we learned was software. Now software basically means list of instructions, set of instructions. Instructions for whom? Instructions for the CPU. Why? So that the CPU can convert input into the output. Now this part here, this topic here contained two main types of softwares, two major categories types of software. One was called operating system software, either called operating system or called system software, or together called as operating system software, and the second one called as application software. Operating system means a master control program which performs all the general functions of your computer. Operating system is a master control program which performs all general functions in your computer, while application software is the one which is specifically installed for some particular function. Specifically installed for some specific function. For example, Tally software is specifically installed by you for specific function of accounting. When you purchase a new computer system, Tally software does not come inbuilt. Yes, but say Windows Media Player comes inbuilt, or your Windows program itself, Windows operating system itself comes inbuilt. That Windows itself which comes inbuilt is your operating system or system software, which is a master control program. It performs all the general functions. Well, you will have a better idea once we discuss each function of the operating system. But first, just to introduce, just to start, I might say that operating system or system software does what? It is a master control program. Yes, it manages hardware and interface application programs, or in simpler words, it manages hardware, manages software. Manages hardware meaning it will manage when to use which hardware, while managing software means to arrange or to prioritize which software will be giving instruction to the CPU. Well, to understand interface application programs, we created one concept here. We understood one concept here called as concept regarding API, application program interface. For example, I'll remind you, operating system. One computer, my PC contains one operating system, but on my computer, can I run more than one programs at a time? Yes, my computer can run three different programs at a time. Now, if three programs are running at a time, all three programs will be giving instructions to the CPU here. Now, if all three programs are giving Okay, so if three different softwares I am using on my computer at a time, then all three softwares will be giving instructions to the CPU at a time. Now, if all the three softwares are simultaneously giving instructions to the CPU, this can't happen because CPU can process only one instruction at a time. Now, if CPU can process only one instruction at a time, how does a computer run three programs at a time? It is possible because of operating system. Operating system here provides an API. API is application program interface. Operating system creates an API, application program interface. Interface means a connection. So operating system provides a connection to these different programs to access the CPU. So now none of the programs can directly access the CPU. Each of these programs will give instruction to the operating system. Operating system will forward that instruction to the CPU. Yes, so none of the programs can give direct instruction to the CPU. These programs will give instruction to the operating system. Operating system will forward instruction to the CPU. CPU can understand only one instruction at a time. CPU can understand, yes, only one instruction at a time. CPU can understand only one instruction at a time. That is why operating system is needed. This means that operating system manages the programs. Also, because of this, it allows the computer to have multitasking to be done. Multitasking means that multiple tasks are conducted at the same time. Your computer can process multiple programs at a time. Yes. Also, because of this, now none of these programs need to know that which CPU are you using. Each of these programs just need to know that which operating system are you using. They don't need to know that which CPU are you using. They just need to know that which operating system are you using. And so accordingly, when a programmer wants to create, say, a new software, any programmer who wants to create a new software, does he need to know that which CPU are you using? No, he just needs to know which operating system are you using. Okay. Also, because of this operating system creates also an interface with the user. It creates interface with the programs over here, but it also creates interface with the user interface over here means a connection. It creates an interface with the user, meaning whenever the user wants to interact with the CPU, can the user directly talk to the CPU? No. Operating system comes in between. Now, when I say operating system creates an interface with the user, that is called as user interface, UI. Basically, user interface means the screen which is presented to the user. Basically, user interface is the screen that is shown to the user. That screen presentation, earlier it used to be non-graphical user interface, also called as command-based user interface. That was the case in DOS operating system, DOS. But nowadays, all the computer systems have graphical user interface. Graphical means GUI. GUI, graphical user interface, means that on your screen you see various graphics, you see icons, you see mouse pointer. Any file you wish to open, you just have to click on that. Yeah, that becomes your graphical user interface. Okay. Anyways, these are the various functions of the operating system. We'll just go through them. Dekho. Hardware functions, meaning managing the hardware, deciding when to use which hardware. User interface, it provides the user interface. Earlier it used to be command based user interface, nowadays it is graphical user interface. Hardware independence is because of the API. Like when the operating system creates an API, so application developers do not can create application softwares that can work on any hardware. They don't need to know which hardware you are using. This creates hardware independence. Now the program is independent of the hardware what you have. Memory management means managing the RAM, controlling the RAM, also controlling the virtual memory, which items to be brought to the RAM, what items are to be removed from the RAM. Multitasking, we said that it is working with more than one applications at a time. Networking capabilities, because of operating system you can connect to a network. Logical security, password protection and all, like on your phone you have the screen lock patterns and all that comes from the operating system. File management means to manage the files, see what files you are having, cut, copy, paste the files and all that facilities are provided by the operating system itself. Next, application software. Application softwares were the ones that are specifically installed for a particular function. Now, within application softwares, we did not learn functions. Rather, what we learned were certain types of the application softwares. Like application suite is a collection of multiple applications bundled together. For example, Microsoft Office. Enterprise softwares are the softwares used by enterprise, used for the company's needs. So these are general business softwares which are pretty huge, and they will actually perform all the different tasks required in the business. All different business activities are done by these softwares. Enterprise infrastructure softwares are the softwares that will provide infrastructure to the company. Infrastructure as in not your routine business activities, but it will be providing you other infrastructure. Generally, these softwares are not installed in your business computers. Rather, it might be installed in somebody else's computer who is providing you infrastructure. Example, Gmail. My company is using an enterprise software, say ERP softwares like core banking system or SAP or something. But along with that software, I might also be using mailing, emails I might be using. Now I have my email account with Gmail. Then Google server contains a software which is providing me email services. That becomes my enterprise infrastructure software. Information worker software are to address individual needs for individual projects within the departments and all. Content access software are the softwares to access content of some files, access digital content or entertainment contents, etc. Educational software used by students. Media development software. Media means audio, video, images. Media development softwares are the softwares for creating audio, video, images, editing audio, video, images. Like for example, you take a group of images, join them into a video, or video editing softwares and all. These are all your media development softwares. Well, that covers my second component, softwares. Next, we'll be talking about the third component, that is data. So the third component, data or data resources. Well, for the data or data resources, we had first learned certain words like these. Small words, not very important, but chalo, we'll go through that. Data means raw piece of information. Information means which is with some context. So data with some context becomes useful. Once it becomes useful, then it becomes information. So information is something that can be used, that is data used in comparison. So in short, data is a raw bit of information which does not make any sense. If it makes sense, it is called as information. Knowledge is the use of information. With this information, now you take some decisions, you make decisions, you set some policies and all. That becomes your knowledge, and knowledge combined with experience will then become wisdom. Okay, now that becomes a little more spiritual. You might limit your discussions only for data and information. For your subject purpose, only these two will be needed. Yeah. Well, under that, we learnt mainly about database management system, DBMS, and database. What is database? Database is a collection of data. Collection of data, how? In what way? Well, database was a collection of data where large amounts of data are combined together into one single unified system. Well, to understand that, we had created one example and we learned certain differences between two important things here. There you go. Well, This diagram covers many things together, many topics together, so pay attention. First, I covered the heading here. I have given two headings here. First heading, I say it is types of network. Well, there can be two types of network: file sharing network, client server network. Chalo, tell me, what was file sharing network? Why is it called file sharing network? Because this is the type of network in which entire file is shared from the central computer to the other computer, while client server network was the more advanced type of network, more complicated, more difficult to create network. But the main speciality about the client server network was that whenever any data is required, then the server does not send the entire file. What the server will send will be only the particular data. Yeah, so client file sharing network requires method of data storage as file processing system, while client server network requires your data to be stored in the form of DBMS. This is where DBMS comes in. Look, you need to learn only this topic, but to learn this DBMS, you need to learn the opposite of that, that is file processing system. And to learn both of them, you need to know that where does it come or where is it used. So think about it like this: file sharing network will always have data storage by the method file processing system, while client server network will always have data storage by the method of DBMS. Now, file processing system was the data storage method in which all my data was stored in various separate Excel files like this. Like in my example, I had Excel files like this: master file, fee records, attendance file, and test marks file. So in my example here, I had four different Excel files in which I was maintaining student data. I have four employees: employee 1, employee 2, 3, and 4. Each of the employees are having each computer. Now, as per the file processing system, I had told you that when employee 2 sitting on computer C2 wants to access, say, this master file, then how will he access that master file? Well, you need to create a file sharing network first. How did I create file sharing network? Well, I've shown you down here. Dekho, I go to computer C5 here. I sit on that computer, go to my computer D drive data folder, or the folder where my files are located, and right click on that folder and enable sharing. Once that folder is shared, so now all these four Excel files are visible to all the four other computers. Now if I want to open one of that file on C2, then what I do on C2, I open my computer, but then do not open D drive. Why? Because does that file exist in a D drive of C2? No, it exists in a D drive of C5. So on C2 computer, open my computer, go to the network drive. Network drive, under that you will see the data folder, and within the data folder all those four files will be visible. Now the moment you double click on this master file, what happens inside the network here? The moment I double click on the master file, then the data along with program will come from hard disk to the RAM. That is the general theory. But here what applied was a little different concept. Yes, the data will come from hard disk to the RAM, but from which hard disk to which RAM? Well, now if I double click on this master file, the data will come from hard disk of C5 to the RAM of C2. The data will come from hard disk of C5 to the RAM of C2. So notice your data never enters the RAM of C5. It comes from hard disk of C5 to the RAM of C2. This is where I said that if the RAM of C5 is not used, so CPU of C5 was not used. So file sharing network was the network in which my central computer here is not a server. Every central computer is not called a server. Here my central computer was called central storage. It is just a central storage device. It is not called a server. Why not server? Then who is called a server? Well, in a client server network, the central computer will be called a server because it provides service. So here my central computer was called a server. Rest of these 4 computers were called as clients. Now why is this called a server? Because it provides service. What service does it provide? Well, here the central computer provides the service of searching a particular data and sending only that data to you. I take an example of Facebook here. Say if you wanted to change your phone number in my Excel sheet records, if you wanted to change your phone number in my records in my Excel sheet, then it can be done by Excel file method here. But if you wanted to change your phone number on Facebook, do you think that the Facebook server will be sending the data about all the Facebook users to your computer? No, naturally not. That will be dangerous. They don't trust you. Nobody trusts you. So at least Facebook doesn't trust you. Now, if the Facebook server cannot send all the Facebook data to you, what it will do is Facebook server will search its database, search only your data and send only that your data to you. That was how the server is working. Yes, so server will search the database, pick up the particular data which you want and send only that data to you. This becomes your client server network. Done. Now within that network, the storage of data happens in the form of database. Storage of data happens in the form of database, meaning when my data was stored in a file processing system, it was in the form of separate individual Excel files. Now if the data is stored in a server, then all these Excel files are combined together into one single unified structure called as a database. What is database? Database is collection of data into one single unified structure. This was my basic introduction about a database. Now along with database there is also DBMS. What is DBMS? Well, database is the collection of data. DBMS is the software which manages this data. Once again, database is the collection of data. DBMS is a software which manages all this data. Yeah. So database is the collection of data, but when I said collection, when I said that these Excel files are combined into one, does it mean that the 4 tables in 4 Excel files are all combined into one table then? Well, no. But what does this mean? Listen again. 4 tables in 4 Excel files are combined into one single file. I never said one table. So the difference is that earlier in case of Excel file method, I had 4 tables in 4 separate files. But now in the DBMS method, I have 4 tables, all 4 tables in one file itself. So all the 4 tables combined into one file becomes the database. Yes, so database is collection of data in the form of tables. Tables that are interconnected tables. Done. This was the basic introduction about your database. Now within that we'll be learning some more things under database. Okay, so continuing further with database models. Within database we learn about database models. Total 3 important database models over here. Number 1, hierarchical model. Then you have network database model, relational model and object oriented model. Hierarchical model, network model, both of them we discussed together. Hierarchical and network, say we learned them in this diagram here. Both of them are a predefined structure. Both of them contain a predefined structure. Hierarchical model contains a predefined hierarchy like this. So in this example, if I had to maintain data about my machines, then all my machine related data here will be classified in under a hierarchy like this. Yes, such that say X limited is my company, contains two factories A and B, contains each factory contains various buildings contain rooms contain the machines. Whatever data about the machines I need to maintain, it will be maintained in some data element under that machine. These data elements are the ones which contain all the data. Say for example, I am maintaining data regarding repairer of the machine, like who repairs which machine, repairing details of the machine, then which machine is repaired by which person, that repairer details will be mentioned in these data elements over here. Yeah, that repairer details will be mentioned in these data elements here. Like machine 12 is repaired by Mr. A, machine 13 is repaired by Mr. B as well as Mr. C, machine 14 is repaired by Mr. B again. Yes, this becomes my hierarchical database structure. Do you understand that? Yes. Okay. Now, within hierarchical structure, it can present one-to-one, one-to-many relations only. Hierarchical structure cannot present many-to-one relation. It cannot present a many-to-many relation. Yes, hierarchical structure cannot do that. Who can do that? Well, the second one, network structure, can do that. Network structure can present many-to-one, many-to-many relation also. For example, many to one means that machine 13, machine 14, both the machines are repaired by same person, Mr. B. And if both the machines are repaired by the same person, Mr. B, then I can show this arrow over here. Instead of writing all details of Mr. B again, I can just show this green arrow. So if this green arrow is possible, then it becomes a network structure. Yes, if this green arrow is possible, then it becomes a network structure. This was the only major difference between hierarchical and network structure. Plus, there are certain common things in them, like each of the levels here is called as a node. Every higher level is called parent, lower level is called a child. So, and the highest level here is called the root level. These are some basics under that. We'll see the content. Dekho. Hierarchical model, it is a hierarchically structured inverted tree pattern. Yes, you know that. All records in the hierarchy are called as nodes. It is a parent-child relation. It shows one-to-one, one-to-many relation, and the top parent record is called as the root record. These are the important things here. Network model is a variation on the hierarchical model itself, where branches can be connected to multiple nodes. It permits records to be member of more than one set at one time. It permits the record, like for example, because in the network model, it will permit repairer B to be part of machine 13 and machine 14, both. This creates many to one relation. Yeah. Plus, network model gives you better retrieval performance, excellent retrieval performance, ठीक, and it is little more flexible than the hierarchical model, ठीक. Third one, relational database model. The word relation means table. So relational model means a table structure. Table structure where all the data is maintained in the form of tables, tables which are interconnected to each other. Yes, all the data is maintained in the form of interconnected tables. So it is a table structure where the word relation means table. The word attribute means the columns or the fields of the table. The table contains rows and columns. Columns are called as fields, fields also called as attributes, and inside that attribute, inside the field, whatever you write can be called as domain. Ordering of the columns is immaterial, theek, so there cannot be identical records. There cannot be any identical records because it is a table format. DBMS will prevent duplication. Yes, relationships can be explicitly defined. Any types of relationships can be defined. Even many to many relation can be defined. All the tables are interconnected to each other using some column. That column which is used for interconnection is called as primary key. Primary key is the column which is used to join the tables, to combine the tables. Okay, now we had learned that in this diagram over here, this diagram where my table 1 is machine data, table 2 is repairer data. Machine data contains all details about machines. One of that data is also the repairer ID. Table 2 is my repairer table, which contains all details about the repairer, but one of that column is also the machine ID. So you see that I have given here cross reference. So machine 12 is repaired by repairer A, and all details of repairer A will be found over here. Repairer A repairs machine 12, all details of machine 12 will be found over here. This kind of cross reference, this column here, is therefore called as the primary key. So in the repairer table connects with other table using repairer ID. That becomes its primary key. And the fourth one, object-oriented database model. Object-oriented model was a model which I told you you need not give very high importance because it is a very advanced kind of structure. But a short revision, this is the database which is created by combining ready-made objects of data. Now what is that object? Object is basically set of data, set of complex data, audio, video, images, all the data combined together. It is like a ready-made set of data. Now object-oriented DBMS is a DBMS which has compiled such ready-made objects to create the entire database. This becomes object-oriented DBMS. More important are advantages, disadvantages of DBMS. Like the first one, advantages, permitting data sharing. Yes, because of database, because of DBMS, you can share the data. Facebook data is shared by millions of Facebook users. Minimizing data redundancy. Redundancy means duplication. In case of database, you remember I had given you example. In case of database, if I try to enter same transaction again, then the system will reject the transaction. Say if I try to enter the student registration of the same student again, like if I put his registration ID again, then the system will reject the transaction saying that this registration already exists. It will not allow me to enter duplication. Excel sheet does not prevent that. So in case of Excel data, Microsoft Excel, if a student registration already exists in the Excel file, can I put his name again in the registration? Yes, but DBMS will not allow that. So it will prevent duplication. Integrity can be maintained. Integrity means that data is connected. All the data in the DBMS will be connected such that you update at only one place, and if you update at just one place, then at all the other places that data will automatically get updated. That is my data integrity. Integrity means connected. Program file consistency. File formats and programs are standardized. The general file format, general programs that are used in DBMS are all standardized. All DBMS use the same kind of file, same kind of file formats and all. User friendly. It is user friendly because user can access any data, any types of reports you can generate and all. Better security because all the data is never given to the client. Only the required data is given to the client. It will restrict access to sensitive data. Achieving program data independence. Now this is important. In DBMS, data does not reside in the applications. Rather, it resides in the database. For example, in Excel program, if I have Excel data, then only Microsoft Excel can access that data. But data inside the DBMS can be accessed by any program. Yes, that means it creates data independence. Data does not depend on the program now. And faster application development. Because of data independence, programmer who wishes to create a new program, he can easily create new program because all the data is ready. Yes, data is ready, so he can more easily create a new program that will suit this database. Disadvantages, two major disadvantages: cost and security. Yes, DBMS softwares are pretty much costly, and security is a risk because all the data is at one place. Now if all the data is at one place, then security will be definitely a problem. Why? Because if this data is lost, then everything gets lost. That is the major problem over here. Yeah. Okay, so that was your certain things about models of DBMS. Okay, next we learn some concepts about database, concepts related to database. Three important concepts we had learned here. One is big data analysis, other is data warehouse, and then data mining. Big data analysis, as the name says, means analysis of big data, analysis of large amounts of data, massively large set of data. If the data size is very large, like say Facebook data and all. Now Facebook has so much data that your routine analysis methods, like say Excel may you do filter or sort and all, such routine analysis methods will not work. For massively large set of data, conventional database tools do not have the power to do the analysis. For that matter, there are advanced methods of analyzing this data that becomes your big data analysis. Well, you are not supposed to learn any methods of big data analysis. What you are learning is just what is the subject of big data analysis. Don't worry, you will not be taught that how to do big data analysis and all. You will not be asked about that. You are just asked that what is the concept about big data analysis. Simple, it means analysis of large amounts of data. Well, benefits of big data analysis. Well, because of big data analysis, business can utilize outside intelligence, access to social data. Like I told you, social media companies like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and all, they will be analyzing all the data that they have, large amounts of data that they have. They keep analyzing the data. That analysis will be helpful for the companies who wish to give advertisement. Yeah, so these companies who wish to give advertisement, they will have access to social data. Early identification of risk. If you analyze the data well in advance, you might get to know that what risk can happen in the future. Improved customer service. If you know the customer better, then you can give better advertisements to the customers and all. And integration of big data technologies with data warehousing will offload infrequently accessed data. Well, this is rather a benefit of data warehousing. What is data warehousing? That was our next point. Data warehouse is basically database of databases. Data warehouse is a database of databases. Remember, database means what? Database means collection of data. Then data warehouse is collection of databases. I'd given you example like this, that I have my current database wherein all my transactions are being recorded. I have current database of say 2 different places, Jayanagar branch, Seshadripuram branch and all. Now data warehouse will contain copies from my current database. Data warehouse will contain copies from my current database. Company will have a policy that periodically they will keep taking copies from the database. So from the current database, I have a policy that on the 1st of every month I will make a copy. Then on 1st January I make a copy of my current database and put it in the warehouse. On 1st February again I make a copy. 1st March again I make a copy. This collection of multiple copies becomes my data warehouse. So what is data warehouse? Data warehouse contains copies of current database. Data warehouse contains copies of these current databases. Plus, every time when I make a fresh copy, old copy is not deleted. Old copy will stay, plus a new copy is created. So now you can imagine that the size of data warehouse will be very huge. Whatever was there in copy 1 is still there in copy 2, plus extra things are also there. Now, routine transactions that are entered, where are the transactions entered? Transactions will continue to be entered in the current database. Transactions are still entered in the current database only. Then why did we create the warehouse? Well, please remember, this is where most of you make a mistake. The main reason why we create a warehouse is for analysis purpose, reporting purpose. You see that here. Main purpose of data warehouse is the analysis and reporting purpose. Because if the top management wants to do some analysis of data, and if they start doing analysis in the routine database, in the current database, then it will overload the routine operations of the company. Now, if you do the analysis, if the top managements start doing analysis of the data in the current database, then the routine transactions will get disturbed. Remember, I'd given an example about IRCTC. Imagine IRCTC server must be getting so many transactions per day. Now, if the IRCTC server is getting so many transactions per day, every day, then from that server itself, if the top management wish to extract some reports, and if the top management is using that server to generate reports, then the routine transactions will get distracted. It is getting thousands and thousands, meaning lakhs of transactions every day, every minute. And if the railway minister says that no, I want to generate a report right now, ready, I am here, I'm sitting over here trying to book a train ticket. Railway minister wants to generate a report, because of that my ticket was not booked. Will that be allowed? No. Well, for that matter, what they do is, when the server is already very busy with the current data, with the current routine transactions, they will create a data warehouse. Warehouse is the one from which analysis is done, reports are generated. Yes. So data from one or more organization databases are extracted and loaded into the warehouse, so that analysis will be done from this warehouse. Now there are three important terms pertaining to data warehouse. Data warehouse is non-operational. Why? Because routine operating activities does not happen here. Rather, data warehouse is just a copy of your main database. Non-operational means routine operating activities like transaction entry is not done in the warehouse. Second, time variant. Time variant means that whenever the data is loaded in the warehouse, it will get a timestamp. Timestamp, like say in my example here, it got a timestamp that this is copy 1, this is copy 2, copy 3. So every time a new copy is made, it is a fresh copy. Old copies are not deleted, old timestamp will not be disturbed. And standardized. When data is brought to the warehouse from more than one databases, then the data that is brought to the warehouse will have to be converted into one standard format. Maybe Jayanagar database and Seshadripuram database both contain the data in a different format. But when it is brought to the warehouse, it has to be converted into one standard format. That is my standardization. Data is standardized while putting in the warehouse. Now within data warehouse, there are two approaches to create the data warehouse, two approaches in designing the warehouse: bottom up approach, top down approach. Bottom up approach says that you first start by creating small data warehouses. These small warehouses are called as data mart. Once these multiple small warehouses are created, it is combined into one single structure, then it becomes a data warehouse. Yes, the small data warehouses called as data mart are created first, then it is combined to create the whole data warehouse. While top down approach says that you first create the whole enterprise wide, company wide data warehouse, and then from that whole data warehouse you make different parts called as data mart. Now you may make parts like say purchase data mart, sales data mart, finance data mart by segregating information related to different things separately. That becomes your data warehouse. Under that, benefits of data warehouse that you will read. Next, data mining. The third part under the advanced concept in database, data mining. Well, data mining is quite similar to your big data analysis, because data mining is also a method of analyzing the data. Data mining is also basically a type of analysis. So data mining means analyzing data to find previously unknown trends and patterns. Important are these words, trends and patterns. This should come in your answer. Previously unknown trends and patterns. The main purpose of data mining is to do analysis so that you can recognize some unknown patterns. Because without data mining you did not know these patterns. Mainly these are the softwares which might convert your say table data into say charts and graphs. Now if you see a data in a table format, it does not show any trends and patterns, but if you convert that into a chart format, graph format, then the trends and patterns are clearly visible. Yes, that is data mining. And it will analyze data. Which data will it analyze? Well, it will analyze the data lying in the data warehouse. It will analyze the data which is lying in the data warehouse. Steps involved in a data mining process. What are the steps involved in data mining? Well, common general steps involved here: data integration. First, you have to collect the data naturally. Then data selection, select the data which you wish to analyze. Data cleaning. Cleaning basically involves that your data might contain some errors. Cleaning involves removing that errors or removing the inconsistent data. That is called as data cleaning. Data transformation, because all the data might not be in the same format, it might needs to be converted into some standard format. That comes data transformation. Once these things are done, then you can run the data mining, means the actual analysis part. After the analysis is done, you'll get the pattern, because analysis was done to find the pattern. Now once you have the pattern, you have to evaluate the pattern and present that pattern in a better way, or present your analysis, present your evaluation for the management. And based on your presentation, the top management will take decisions that they wish to take using this data. Yeah, this becomes your data mining. And that completes our component regarding data and DBMS. Last component under information systems components is networks. Now what is exactly a network? Network means connection of two or more computers. Computer network is collection of computers and other hardware interconnected to each other. But the main purpose why we create network is sharing of resources. Why do I create a network? Well, I create network for sharing resources. Resources like data, hardware, software, services, all such resources can be shared. That is my reason I create a computer network. Now when you write an answer of networks, any answer of network you write, these three words should definitely come in your answer. Be careful, no matter what answer about networks you write, these three words should definitely come in your answer, that network is for sharing of resources. Yeah. Okay, that is the basic meaning. What is a network? Within the network, each computer in the network will be called as a node. Types of network: there can be connection oriented network versus connectionless network. Well, this was important. We had impact of this discussion later in other topics also. I'll just remind you. Connection oriented network means that from the sender to the receiver, there is one dedicated line of communication. Dedicated line. Connection is first established and then it is always connected. While connectionless network means that from the sender to the receiver, there is no dedicated line. There are multiple routes of connection available. There are more than one connections available between sender and receiver. Every time you have to send a message, you have to choose which route might be selected. You have to choose that which route will be the one on which you send the data. This becomes your non-dedicated line. Well, I had given you various examples to discuss this point over here. Examples like, say, I have a exclusive road used only by me, that becomes a dedicated line. But if I am using a road which is a general public road, then public road which is used by other public also, that becomes a non-dedicated line. Yeah. So connectionless network means a non-dedicated line. There is no prior connection, but every time you have to send the data, then you have to create a connection. Plus, data which is being exchanged should have complete contact information of the recipient, and at each intermediate destination it is decided how will it proceed further. So if there is a dedicated line from the sender to the receiver, then my data need not have full information about the receiver, because there is anyways only one line of communication. If I transmit data on this line, it will definitely reach the receiver. But in case of non-dedicated line, my data should contain all details about the receiver. Because there is no dedicated line, my data might reach the receiver through any of the nodes in between. So for these nodes, for guiding these nodes, my data should contain complete contact information of the recipient. Yeah. Anyways, many examples I had given you there. I'm not reminding all of that. All those examples were to remember dedicated line, non-dedicated line. To some of your students, some of the live students in Bangalore, I had given an example regarding, say, dedicated line means that from the metro station till my institute, I have a skywalk. If I have created a skywalk from the metro station to my institute, so you students need not walk on the general roads. They will come through that skywalk directly to my institute so that they can get lost in between. But non-dedicated line means that from the metro station to my institute there is no private skywalk that I have created. Rather, you have to walk through the general roads, take auto or by walk or by say take a lift from your friends, whatever, but you have to reach my institute. Now for reaching my institute there are various routes available. Any route you can take to reach my institute. Yes, you might even have to ask on the way that where is this institute located. Yes, but if it was a dedicated line, you don't need to ask anyone because you know that this road will definitely reach to Devang sir's institute. Yeah. Okay. Within networks, we also learned further functions of networks. Functions of network like routing, bandwidth, resilience, contention. Each word are technical term. Routing is basically the act of deciding the route. Like whenever my data reaches node 1, node 1 will decide that where the data will be further sent. If the node 1 is deciding the route, that how to send the data to the recipient, then node 1 becomes a router. Routing is the task of deciding the route, deciding on how to communicate the data from source to destination, how to make the data reach from sender to the receiver. Bandwidth is the amount of data that can be sent. Nowadays, your internet speed is measured in terms of Mbps, Gbps and all. That would basically indicate the bandwidth. Broadband connection gives you faster speed because more amount of data can be sent in a given point of time, in a given duration of time. So amount of data that can be sent in given time, Mbps, megabytes per second. Resilience means the durability of the network, ability of the network to recover from errors. Resilient network, if my network is very resilient, means it is strong. In case of any error, it automatically recovers. That is called as resilient. Contention basically means competition. When there is a conflict for the same resource, when two or more computers are fighting for the same connection, if two devices are fighting for the same connection, then it is called as contention, competition. Benefits of network, distributed information. All the information distributed across various branches can be consolidated together. Yes. Resource sharing. Yes, sharing of resources we learned. Better computational power because processing power is also distributed. It can, because of networks, you can share processing between server and the client. Reliability. Once if one machine is not working, then you can use another machine. If one ATM machine does not have cash, you can go to another machine to get your cash. So reliability will be maintained. User communication, it will allow the users to communicate with each other. Plus it will have following impacts like time compression. Your things can be done, your jobs can be done faster. Transmission can be done more quickly. Overcoming geographical dispersion. Your branches might be located at various geographical locations, but still it can be brought together. That is geographical dispersion. Geographically remote sites can work as though they are one single unit. Restructuring business relationships. Because of networks, my relations with my business relations, my customers, my clients and all will be now different. Not saying good or bad, but the way I communicate, the way I contact my clients and all will all be different. Plus I can eliminate intermediaries from between because of the networkings and all. Anyways, that covers my first topic of the chapter, that was components of information systems. Yeah. Next topic, starting with the next topic, that is information system controls. Information system controls are basically restrictions that are put in my information system, restrictions so that errors do not happen, so that mistakes are avoided. Now controls were classified under various categories like these. Some of these categories were important ones, like say out of all these categories of controls, two of them were the more important ones, that is logical access controls, and application controls. But chalo, we'll see through all of them. Say controls are classified under three main categories, like based on objectives of control, based on nature of IS resource, and based on audit function. Yes. Based on objectives, you had preventive, detective, corrective controls. Preventive controls are the ones which will prevent the damage from happening. Detective controls are to detect the damage that has already happened, and corrective controls are to rectify once the damage is already done. Yeah. Controls based on nature of resource, you had environmental controls, that is controls against damages due to environmental factors, natural or man-made environmental factors. Physical access controls, that is controls to prevent physical entry by someone into your system. And logical access controls is controls to prevent entry of virus hackers into your system. Audit functions, based on audit function, managerial controls. Look, controls based on audit function contains managerial controls. Managerial controls are the controls that are to be implemented by people like managers, while application controls are the controls that are implemented by softwares and controls implemented by the software. Okay, well, under that first set of controls, preventive controls are the ones to prevent the damages from happening. Yes. Now, preventive controls, for example, it will prevent alphabetic character from being entered in a numeric field. I might have given an example like this, that in the name field, on any website, when you are entering the name field, in the name field it will allow you to enter alphabets, but it will not allow you to enter number. This is like preventive control. It will prevent wrong entry of data. Well, the example given here is exact opposite of that. Example here is almost opposite of that. It says that it will block alphabets in the name field. So say on some website, when they ask you to enter date of birth, you cannot enter your name because it is a preventive control. Access controls, like for accessing some computer you need to enter password, that is also part of preventive controls. That will prevent unauthorized access. Antivirus softwares are preventive controls designed to prevent. Preventive controls are in general all of them who are designed to prevent an error or omission from happening. Yeah, it might be manual or it might be computerized controls. Then certain examples of preventive controls are here that you will read. I'm not revising all. Detective controls. Detective controls are for the errors that are already done. So detective controls are to detect that where error has happened, or detective controls can also detect potential places where errors can happen. Remember these words, that will help you understand the examples. Detective controls can detect the errors that are already done, or it can also detect the potential places, potential areas where something can go wrong. They are designed to detect errors, identifying account numbers of inactive accounts. Look, these are examples. Identifying inactive accounts, like say if there is a person who has a Facebook account, but his Facebook account has never been used, he has never accessed, or he has never rarely opened his Facebook account. Now suddenly if there is activity in his account, then Facebook might find this doubtful because the detective controls of the Facebook server will find this doubtful. Yeah. Or it will detect suspicious activities. Yes. For sensitive electronic communications, detective controls can indicate that a message, whether it is corrupted or not, whether the sender's identification is secured or not. Many times when you receive maybe some email, then Gmail might tell you that this mail has come from unreliable sources. Yes, that is like a detective control. Damage has not already happened, but it is identifying potential places from where damages can happen. Yeah. Anyways, under that also examples you can read. Characteristics of detective controls also we had discussed. Characteristics like these detective controls will give you clear understanding of the lawful activity, so that anything which deviates from these is reported. Any deviation from the law will be reported. Established mechanism to refer the reported unlawful activities to appropriate person. Whenever any unlawful thing happened, it has to be reported. Interaction with the preventive control to prevent such errors in future. And surprise checks are also done by the supervisor under the detective controls. Corrective controls is to correct the error that has happened. For example, correction of data entry errors, like for example typing errors, typing mistakes. Microsoft Word has features about autocorrect. Now these autocorrect features are basically a type of corrective controls. It will correct the errors that you are doing in the typing. Removing unauthorized users, remove kana, that is also corrective controls. Recovery from disruptions is also examples under corrective controls. Some other examples here: corrective journal entries. If some entries have gone wrong, then you'll have to enter another entry to rectify those old entries, that is corrective journal entries. Business continuity planning, we will see later in one topic. Backup, you know what is a backup? Backup means creating a copy of your data, so that if something goes wrong, you can get the data back from the backup. So backup is also a part of corrective controls. Rerun, if the process creates an error, if the processing goes wrong, what you do? Reprocess. Rerun is like doing the process again. Investigating budget variances and reporting violations. Well, in your costing subject, you might have done variance calculation. Well, corrective control is to investigate that why did that variance go negative? Why did I have adverse variance and all? You find that is called investigating the variance. Anyways, within that also you had some characteristics that you can read. Environmental controls were simpler ones. Environmental controls are controls against environmental damages like fire damages or electrical exposure, that is electrical fluctuations, power fluctuations, water damages, pollution damages and all. Tell me, how do you prevent against fire damages? Various examples are given over here. You don't need to remember all. You can create your own answers. You can just go through them for a general idea here. Yeah. These are your environmental controls that I'm not revising. Physical access controls are the controls to prevent any person from physically entering my premises. Physical access controls are controls to prevent a person from entering into my premises or entering into my, say, office and all. Well, for that matter, there are various examples that we had learned. So like say cipher locks are combination locks. It is basically a type of lock where 4-digit combinations can unlock the lock. Cipher locks. Controlled visitor access, like whenever a visitor enters into my office, the security guard will take all his details and give him a visitor pass. Any person is not allowed to visit my office. Yeah. Bonded personnel, bonded labor. Certain companies will make the employees sign a bond. They will make an employee sign a bond while employing him in my company, so that if he does any physical damages or physical damages in my company, then I will cut money from the bond money that he has given. Yeah, that is called bonded labor. Okay, some more examples there. Bolting door locks, these are different types of locking systems that might be there. Bolting door locks is like lock and key. You have a lock and a key, you bolt the lock. Electronic door locks, like there might be a magnetic card or fingerprint scanner to unlock the door. Pin numbers, plastic cards, ID cards and all, ID batches. Log is created. Log is basically a history that is recorded, that who entered the premises, who left the premises at what time. Electronic logging can also be done. CCTV cameras will also help you in your securities. Deadman door, I had given you earlier. Deadman door is basically a pair of door. One door and after that a second door. Only after authorization the first door will open, but once the person enters through the door number 1, second door will open only after door 1 is closed and locked. So only after door 1 is closed properly locked, only then the second door can open. Why so? Such that if there was only one door, then while I am entering into the door, some person might escape through the door. But to prevent that, they have two door system, so that I will have to cross two doors consecutively while entering the premises. Because of this, there will never be any escape from the premises while some person is entering. That becomes your deadman door. Non-exposure of sensitive facilities. Sensitive facilities means the areas in my office which are crucial, which are sensitive areas. Well, sensitive areas in my office should not be easily exposed. Exposed as in exposed as in that I will not have huge signboard saying that this is my locker room, this is where I keep my cash locker. I will not have huge signboard saying that this is my server room, this is where I keep my server. No, these are sensitive facilities. It should not be easily exposed to the outside people. Computer terminal locks, you might have seen that in malls and shopping centers and all, where they are selling mobile phones and laptops and all. Their laptops are having lock so that you cannot pull the laptop away from their counter. Single entry point alarm systems and all, these are all examples for physical access controls. Yes, please. So going further, next set of controls is logical access controls. These controls are the most part under the controls topic of this chapter. Out of all the controls, I would consider this as the most important set of controls. Now, under logical access controls, first we learned some difference between virus and worm. Basically, both of them are bad instructions that will instruct the CPU to do bad things. It will tell the CPU to delete some data, or it will tell the CPU to replicate some files in the RAM. Ultimately, that will slow down your computer, create errors in your computers and all. Well, you already had a general idea about what is a virus, but here we differentiated between virus and a worm. Plus, we understood that virus or worm, both of them are basically bad instructions. So basically it is a type of program. But what is the difference? Difference is that virus is a program which attaches itself. Virus is a program, yes, but virus program does not exist separately. Virus is not a program that will exist separately individually. Rather, virus gets attached to another legitimate program. Virus is something that will be attached to another program. Like for example, if I have VLC player, then in my VLC player there are good instructions of the VLC player, but along with those good instructions of VLC player, virus will put its own bad instructions also. This is why now when I play the VLC player program, when I process that VLC player program, then along with good instructions of the VLC player, CPU will also process bad instructions of the virus. This is what starts causing damages. Yeah. While worm had a speciality that worm can exist separately. Worm is bad instructions, but it is like an entire program filled with bad instructions. It is not having its bad instructions put into another program. Rather, worm is itself a separate bad instruction program itself. Yeah. The main problem with worm was that it will duplicate very fast. It can replicate very fast. It can spread very fast. Why? Because it does not need a host program. It just needs to replicate on its own. Virus can replicate only if it will find a target program, host program. Yeah. Anyways, now under logical access controls, the first thing we had done was to learn about various types of exposures. The word exposure means risk. So logical access controls are the controls to prevent what? Logical access controls are controls against damages to my data, damages to my programs. Now question is, what can cause damages to data, damages to program? Yes, virus and worms can cause damages to data and program, but there are certain other things also that can cause damages to data and program. Other things like these. Let's see. These are different types of risk that might cause damages to my data, damages to the program. So the first one The first one under that, data diddling. Data diddling is basically changing the data before or after it has entered into the system. In simplest words, these are the words. It refers to change of data before or after they entered into the system. Bomb is basically a type of virus. It is basically a type of a bad instruction. It is a bad code deliberately planted, deliberately intentionally put either by the insider of the company or by the supplier of the software. But how is this different from routine virus and worms? Well, the main speciality about bomb is that yes, it is a bad instruction, but the moment my computer contains the worm, or I mean the bomb, the moment my computer has the bomb or the bomb enters my computer, does it start causing damages? No, it will cause damages only when the trigger event happens. Your answer should contain these words. Bomb will explode only when that trigger event happens. Trigger event might be some particular transaction, trigger event might be some particular date, whatever. Whenever that event happens, then the bomb will start causing damages. Yes. However, bomb cannot infect other programs, because if the bomb exists in my, say, student registration software, then it cannot affect my other programs, say accounting software, because that bomb requires a trigger event. Now the bomb which is there in the student registration software will find a trigger event in the student registration software. It cannot find another trigger event in another software. Yeah, so it will generally not infect other programs like that. Acha, if that trigger event does not happen, then also the bomb might explode if it is a time based bomb. It's like a time bomb. Yeah. Christmas card was one specific example of the worm that existed in the IBM systems and the internal email of the IBM company. It is a very particular example. They said that what happened in this worm is that when an employee would type the word Christmas on his screen, then like that dancing Christmas tree will appear. But along with that, same output is also telecast to all the other computers on the network, such that other computers who are doing some work, their work will be distracted, and they will also see that dancing Christmas tree, and they might not be able to save their file. Yeah, that was your Christmas card. Worm, we already learned what is a worm. You see that here, that the worm does not require a host program like a Trojan. You remember what was a Trojan? Well, Trojan was a type of a virus. Trojan is one of the very famous examples of a virus, and in fact, maybe if you remember, I'd done one story regarding the Trojan. Yeah, this was the story. Remember, this was my horse, if you remember that. The Trojan horse, that word comes from the story of the Trojan horse, in which the Trojan horse is a type of a virus such that it will appear to be a legitimate file. It will appear to be a legitimate file, but the moment it enters into your system, moment you allow that into your system, you feel that it is legitimate, so you allow that into your system, and then it starts causing damages in your system. Yeah, that was basically Trojan horse. Worm does not require a host program like a Trojan, because worm exists separately. It copies itself, it can be detected easily. These are certain keywords that should come in your answer. It copies on its own, but it can be detected easily in comparison to Trojans and viruses. Why? Because worm exists separately. If it exists separately, it will be easy to detect. Then two examples under that we had was existential worm and alarm clock worm. Existential worm will just exist and occupy space in your RAM, slowing down your things. And alarm clock worm will just set alarms, unnecessary alarms, uthayega aapko and all. Rounding down and salami techniques, both we had learnt together. Rounding down is basically a kind of error in the software, or maybe intentionally put in the software, such that whatever amounts you enter or whatever amounts the transaction refers to, this rounding down error will automatically round off the amount, and the fraction amount which was rounded off is transferred to some another unauthorized account. Like this example I had given, that if your bill amount turns out to be 187.75, but what is shown as deposit in your bank account turns out to be only 187, that 0.75 is transferred to the bank account of some other fraud, or maybe it is transferred to the bank account of the software supplier. Yeah, that is your rounding down, where the fraction amount will be rounded and transferred to an unauthorized account. Now, because that fraction amount is very small, it will rarely be noticed, it will not be noticeable. And salami technique is even more advanced. Look, if all the fractions are rounded off, it might be noticed sometime. But in case of salami technique, all fractions are not rounded off. Rather, in case of salami technique, this was the difference. Dekho, in case of salami technique, instead of 187.75, it is not converted into 187. Rather, that 187.75 might be converted into 187.6, meaning from every number like this, fixed fraction is removed. Now that fixed fraction 0.15 that was removed, it was transferred to the bank account of some fraud, or it is transferred to the bank account of that software developer. Now, because it is a very small amount, it will rarely be noticed. Plus, even after this fraud, your amount, the final amount is still a fraction. So it might not even create a doubt that why are all the numbers round figures. That is your salami technique. Almost similar. It involves slicing off small amounts of money from the transaction, and every time a fixed amount is deducted. Yeah. Trapdoors is basically some error left in the software that will allow insertion of specific logic such that the program developer or the fraud can insert some additional instructions into your program. Once you start using the program, somebody else can insert extra instructions inside just to cause damages to you. That can become a trapdoor. Spoofing, we had done detailed discussion about that. Spoofing basically involves forging one's source address. Forging matlab duplicating. You appear to be me, that is called as forging. You sign the check under my name, that is called as forging my signature. Yes, so spoofing is basically like appearing to be someone else. Forging one's source address, where one machine is used to impersonate the other machine. I'd given you various examples of banking frauds. Most of the banking frauds nowadays that happen are happening by this method, spoofing. I will create a website which looks like a bank website. So you come to my website and enter your ID password, and now I have your ID password. Yeah. That was your spoofing. It will duplicate the login procedure. I will duplicate the login procedure of a banking company. I will make a website that looks exactly like the HDFC Bank website. That is called as duplicating the login procedure. And because of that, I will capture users' passwords and maybe then cause damages to you. Asynchronous attack is basically attack on the data that is waiting to be transmitted. Data that is waiting to be transmitted, like the data which is in your buffer memory that is waiting to be transmitted. When you transmit some data outside your computer, the data gets stored in a temporary storage called as buffer memory. From that buffer memory, the data is gradually released to the recipient. Now, while the data is being transmitted, before the data is transmitted, while it is waiting to be transmitted, at that time these attacks might cause damages. Data leakage, like the waiting data might get leaked and some hacker might come to know that data. Subversive attack is little different. Subversive attack means that the data itself is not leaked, but information about the data is leaked. For example, if I am transmitting my credit card number, then data leakage, the word data leakage, first one would mean that my credit card number itself is leaked to the hacker. But subversive attack means that the data itself does not get leaked. Like my credit card number is not lost, but information about my transmission is given to someone. Like somebody does not come to know my credit card number directly, but that somebody will come to know that I am about to transmit credit card number details. That somebody does not get to know my credit card number, but he might get to know that I am going to transfer, I am about to transfer the credit card information on the network. Yes, that becomes my subversive attack, information about the message that is being transmitted. Wiretapping is like phone tapping, spying on the transmission done by someone. Piggybacking means following an authorized person through a secured door. If I am authorized, I am entering into the premises, but while the door is open, you also enter along with me. That was called as piggybacking. Yeah. Logical access violators was the discussion that who causes logical damages. Hackers, employees, information system personnel, former employees, end users, etc. These are the people that can cause the logical access violations. Anyways, these were the exposures. Exposures means I have logical access risk against what? Next, we talk about control measures. Control measures as in what all things should we do or can we do to prevent such logical damages. Now, under the control measures, you had a long list of many different methods to control the logical access. Well, all of them we had not discussed, some of them we had discussed, and some of them I discussed in more details. We'll just go through some of them again. User registration, every account user should be having proper registered user. Privilege management, that access privileges, privilege means permissions given to various employees should be minimum. In fact, each employee should be given the bare minimum permission. Each employee should be given the minimum permission as in every employee will be given permission only regarding the things that he needs to access. Bare minimum permission will be given to each employees. Just a minute. Yeah, as far as possible, the minimum permissions will be given to each of the employees. Only the permissions will be given only with respect to the things that he is required to access. User password management is like educating the users, making them responsible how to use the password and all, and review of the access rights. Yes, periodically these access rights should be reviewed. Today, if I am given some permission, after 1 month they will review my permissions, that do I still need that permission or not. User responsibilities, user should have a strong password, and user should ensure that none of the equipment is left unprotected and all. Okay. Network access control policy on the use of network service must be aligned with the business. My network policy, my policy that who can use internet should be in line with my business, should be matching that what is required for my business. Enforced path, this I explained with a diagram here, that if I have a network of 5 computers like this, internet connection will be given to this network, but internet is not given directly like this. No, instead I will plan that internet is given to computer C5 and C5 will share that internet to others. Now if internet is given through C5, meaning each of these 4 other computers, whoever wants internet access, they will have to transmit their request to C5. C5 will forward it to the internet. So anything that comes from the internet will have to pass through C5. So anything that comes from the internet will have to pass through computer C5, and because of that I say that it is an enforced path. All the internet access is routed through that one central computer C5. Any internet access will always come through that one central computer C5. Segregation of networks. For that, it was using a word called VPN over here. But well, to understand that VPN, I gave you explanations regarding 2 different things: leased line network and virtual private network. Virtual private network is VPN, but before that, leased line network. This was an example for connection oriented network. Remember when we started the networks component, you had 2 types of network: connection oriented network, connectionless network. Well, this is examples for each of them. Connection oriented network is like from my branch A to my branch B. I have branch A in Ahmedabad, I have branch B in Bangalore. My company has two branches. Now in Ahmedabad branch I have 5,000 computers. This is my main head office. Bangalore branch has 3,000 computers, but my database is here in Ahmedabad branch. Then how does Bangalore branch communicate with the Ahmedabad branch? Well, I cannot set up an actual cable from Ahmedabad to Bangalore. So what I had done was that I talked to BSNL. BSNL already has telephone cables from Ahmedabad Telephone Exchange to Bangalore Telephone Exchange. I just told them that you give one of your telephone cables to me on lease, on rent. So BSNL provided this telephone cable to me, which I will now use for connecting my Ahmedabad branch with my Bangalore branch. This cable is now creating a network called as leased line network. Leased line network where my communication line is taken on rent from the telecom company. Now this becomes a connection oriented network because now I have permanent connection between branch A, branch B, plus this line which I leased from BSNL is now disconnected from the other BSNL network. So now this particular line is used exclusively only by my company. Only for two branches of my company I use this line. Nobody else is using that same line. It is a dedicated network. You remember dedicated line? That is the one over here. But obviously this will turn out to be very expensive. Plus if I have multiple branches, too many branches, if I have multiple branches to connect, then that VPN, then that lease line method does not work. Instead what I did was, from my Ahmedabad branch, the database which I had, the database from Ahmedabad branch is removed and I put that database on the internet here. On the internet, because internet is a network available everywhere. It appears, it is available in Ahmedabad also, it is available in Bangalore also. So if I put my database on the internet, then all 5 Ahmedabad computers can access that database. All my Bangalore computers can also access that database. But if it is put on the internet, then anyone can access that database. Even public can access that database. Should I allow that? No. Well, to prevent public from accessing my database, I put these two red circles here. Dekho. The red circles indicates that the database is now protected with passwords and other restrictions. Yes. So this creates my virtual private network. It is my private network created on the public network. The word virtual means artificial. What is artificial here? Network is artificial? No. Privacy is artificial. So virtual private network means that I created my own private network on the public network of internet. Yes. Of course, this type of network becomes my connectionless network because from branch A to branch B, there is no continuously running connection. If I want to connect, I need to connect to the internet first. Yeah. Secondly, this becomes a non-dedicated line. Why non-dedicated? Because internet is used only by me? No, internet is used by other public also. Yes, this becomes my virtual private network. But the logical access control which you had here, read that. It says that segregation of networks. It says that in case of VPN connection, your VPN connection should be isolated from internet usage service. Meaning if branch A is given internet connection to access this database, then branch A employees should be allowed to access only this database. Look, by putting passwords on the database, I prevented public from accessing this database. But how do I prevent my employees from accessing other things on the internet? There is Facebook on the internet, there is YouTube on the internet, there is various other programs on the internet and all. Now how do I prevent my employees accessing other things on the internet? Well, For that matter, I will create a proxy server. For that matter, I can create a proxy just like this proxy server, that every internet access, every internet request coming from C1, C2, C3, C4 will pass through C5. C5 will check whether it is valid request, only then the website will open. Yes, so this would create an enforced path. This would isolate my network from the internet. So look, because of such proxy, now what happens is these 5 computers of Ahmedabad, can they access anything on the internet? No. What can they access? They can access only the database on the internet, nothing else they can access. Similarly, these 5 computers of Bangalore branch, what can they access on the internet? They can also access only this database. They cannot access other things on the internet. This is like segregating my network with the other internet. Yes, so now in my VPN, this yellow design network that you see, this entire yellow design that you see is my private network, such that public cannot access this network of mine, and my employees also cannot access other things on the internet. Yes, because my employees cannot access other things on the internet, this is more secured. This becomes an isolated network. Yeah. Authentication, authorization, ठीक है, that is like password checking. Firewalls, we had learned, I had given you example, firewalls का example दिया था, that was, if you remember, like Lakshman Rekha. It will be a perimeter security. It is a security system outside or at the entry point of your network, such that it will allow only authorized traffic, authorized items to enter into your network from outside. Yeah. Encryption was another important term here. Encryption was what? Well, I'd given you detailed discussion about encryption over here. We'll remind you. First of all, remember, encryption is for securing what? Encryption is a method to secure what? It is a method to secure. It is a method to secure my transmission. So encryption does not keep the data inside the sender secured. No. It does not keep data inside the receiver secured. No. It will secure the data while transmission. Because during transmission, hackers might hack into my transmission and see what I'm transmitting. To prevent that, what we did was encryption. How does encryption work? Well, to prevent that, what encryption did was my clear text, normal text, was converted into ciphertext. Ciphertext is a coded language. Yes, so my normal text is converted into some code language. Now what is transmitted on the internet is that code language. Does that prevent the hacker from hacking my transmission? No, but it will not prevent, it will obviously not stop the hacker from hacking. So what is the benefit? Benefit is that yes, it will not stop the hacker from hacking, but even if the hacker will hack, now he will not understand what I am transmitting. Yes, so the only benefit of this encryption is that it will prevent the hacker from understanding my transmission. Now at the receiving end, it receives the ciphertext, that is the code language. That ciphertext is then converted back into the clear text. Converting clear text into ciphertext is called encryption, and later converting that ciphertext back into the clear text is called as decryption. Yes, encryption is done using some particular method of encryption. That method of encryption is called as a key, secret key in this case, while decryption would also require that same key. Now, how will the receiver be able to convert that ciphertext into clear text? It can convert only if the receiver knows the secret key. But why would the receiver know the secret key? Well, it will definitely know the secret key because it is the same software of the same company. For example, Axis Bank web page here, Axis Bank server here. For example, when I send a WhatsApp message to you, then you might have seen on WhatsApp screen, they are specifically mentioning that this WhatsApp transmission is covered under end-to-end encryption, meaning my WhatsApp software will convert my normal text into ciphertext, send it to you. In your your mobile, your WhatsApp software will reconvert that encrypted text, ciphertext into the normal text. How can your phone do the decryption? Well, your phone can do the decryption because it is using the same application, WhatsApp application. Yeah. Okay. Now this entire concept that I gave, I called that as the secret key encryption method. There is another method of encryption that will be covered later in another part of the syllabus, called as public key private key encryption. More simpler words, this was called as digital signature. Digital signature is basically a concept of encryption in which I will purchase a digital signature first. When I purchase, it comes to me as a pen drive. I have to register this digital signature with the government. When I register with the government, meaning this pen drive contains encryption software. Now when I register this pen drive with the government, stating that this pen drive is my digital signature, meaning at that time my public key is given to the government, it will be put on the government server. Now whenever I want to send a document to you, I will encrypt that document using my private key. Private key is used to make the encryption. Public key is used to recognize the encryption. So I will do the encryption using my private key, and after encrypting I give that document to you. Yes. Now what is the benefit of this private key encryption? Well, if I have encrypted the document using my private key, now when you receive this document, you can check with my public key on the government server to ensure that this type of encryption could have been done only by Devang sir's private key. So what does it prove to you? This method of encryption can simply prove to you that the document has come from me. The only benefit of this encryption, it is to prove that the document has come from me. Yep. That was your digital signature. Further, callback devices is a device that will require the user to enter a password. You have to enter a password, but even though the password you entered is correct, in spite of correct password, system will break the connection and the system will call back the caller's number. System's callback device will call the caller's number again to ensure that whether you initiated the transaction or not. That is callback devices. I'd given you an example regarding OTP. I was doing some credit card transaction and a huge value transaction, and that also say overseas out of India transaction. Then after I enter the OTP, in spite of entering OTP, my transaction was not completed. Instead, I get a call from the bank, and the person at the other end is actually asking me that there has been a transaction initiated in your credit card. Are you the person who actually initiated the transaction? I said yes. Only then my transaction was approved. So why did the bank call me back to ensure my transaction? Because maybe if some fraudster has got to know my password or my OTP, then he is doing transaction in my name, then the bank will not clear the money. Yes, bank called me, ensured that I have genuinely done the transaction with my own will, then only bank will clear the transaction. Further, automated terminal identification. Terminal identification, like servers might have this control such that when you access the server from a particular terminal, only then you are allowed the access. Like for example, purchase employees can access only purchase data, yes, but they can access purchase data only from the computers in the purchase department. So if you are a purchase employee, you can access purchase data from your company computer. But if you go home, from your home computer, from your home laptop, can you access the purchase transactions? No, because the server will have terminal identification. Certain transactions can be initiated only from certain locations or certain computer terminal. Access token. Well, every time in certain systems they have this, that if the login attempt is successful, then the operating system will create an access token. This token contains information about the user, and mainly it contains information about the privileges granted, so that every time you have to do that task, You don't have to enter the password again because you're already given the token. Token contains the list of permissions. So whatever transaction you wish to do, you just have to show the token and your transactions will be approved. That is access token. Discretionary access control we had learnt. Discretionary access controls means that resource owners might be granted discretionary access control. You are a sales employee, you have entered sales transactions, then you are the owner of the sales transaction, resource owner. I am purchase employee. So being a purchase employee, I am generally not allowed to access or see your sales transaction. But if you want me to check your transaction, then top management has not given me permission to see the sales transaction. But you being the owner of sales transactions, you can give me permission to see your transactions. Yes, that means that top management has given you discretionary access control. You can share your permission to others at your discretion. Yeah, that was discretionary access control. Terminal timeout and limitation of connection time. Terminal timeout says that it will log out the user if the terminal remains inactive. When you're doing an internet payment, if you sit idle for say around 3 to 5 minutes, then they will tell you session timeout, or it will automatically log out from the system. Yes, that is terminal timeout. And limitation of connection time says that after a certain specific time, connection will not be permitted. For example, OTP when you get on your phone, generally these OTPs are valid for say 5 to 10 minutes only. So limitation of connection time. Sensitive system isolation says that the computer systems which are more sensitive, you keep them isolated. Like the computer systems which contain your main database, keep it isolated, keep it separate. Separate means not on the network. For example, ICAI, I had given you this example only. If you feel that you can hack ICAI website to release or to leak the exam papers and all, well, do you think that ICAI will put the papers of the next exam on its website? No. Rather, the papers of the next exam will never be put on a website. Rather, it might be in a computer system that is not even connected to the internet. Isolated computer. Event logging. Remember, log means history recorded. Event logging means that whatever transactions done in your computer, all that transaction history should be recorded in the log. It will contain who entered the transaction, at what time did he enter the transaction, with whose approval did he enter the transaction. All these things will be written in the log. That is your logging. Anyways, these are all your logical access controls. So one last one I can also discuss still. Clock synchronization says that your computer has a clock down there in the bottom left corner. Now that clock should always be synchronized to the correct time, because look, if the clock shows wrong time, then what is the problem? If the clock shows wrong time, then as such no direct problem. But if that clock shows a wrong time, then the event log recorded will also be recorded in wrong time. The log recording will also go wrong if your clock contains a wrong timing. Yeah. Anyways, so these were your logical access controls. Okay, going further, next is managerial controls. Managerial controls now falls under the third category, that is controls based on audit function. Managerial controls and application controls. Basic difference is that managerial controls are the controls that are implemented by people, by the employees or by the people in the company, while application controls are the controls implemented by the software. Yes, going through them again, fast revision. Managerial controls, you had various categories under that. The first one, top management and information system management control, which says that top management should do what? Well, top management in any company is responsible for four things mainly: planning, organizing, leading and controlling. Planning involves that they need to set up the plan. Planning involves that they need to set up the plan, they need to decide, they need to recognize opportunities where IT can be applied, where technology can be used, and once they identify opportunity, they need to identify resources that are needed, that what all resources will be needed in order to implement technology here, what computers will be needed, what softwares will be needed, what employees will be needed. All that they need to plan. They will also make a strategic plan, operational plan. Strategic plan is the long run plan, top level plan. Operational plan is a short term plan, that is for day-to-day routine activities and all. Yeah. Next is organizing. Well, organizing, they will need to organize basically means that they need to acquire all the resources that they had planned. They need to acquire the resources needed to accomplish the plan, and they need to also acquire the staff, employees, recruit the staff that is needed to accomplish the plan. Leading is like motivating the employees and making effective communications, effectively informing the employees that what is expected from them. Controlling is about comparing your actuals with the planned. Controlling basically involves comparing your budget and actual. That is also done by the top management, and after that comparison, corrective actions are to be taken. Next, system development management control. Who does that? Well, system development is done by the system analyst. System development is done by whom? It is done by the system analyst. And remember, who was the system analyst? System analyst was the chartered accountant. System analyst is the person who will analyze your entire system of working and make a list of requirements. This requirements he will then give to the programmer. Programmer is the person who will then make a program. Remember, we had made a discussion regarding system analyst and the programmer. How do these two guys work together? Yes, system analyst will analyze your business and make a list of requirements, what is needed from the software, and that will be then conveyed to the programmer. Programmer will then make a program accordingly. Yeah. So system development management controls are the control aspects to be done by the system analyst. System authorization, like he needs to obtain request in writing by the user, only then he will start his work. Yes. User specification means to understand what the user wants, to understand the needs of the user that must be satisfied by the system, and these user specifications he needs to convert into technical specifications. So he will translate user specifications into technical specifications. I've given you example like this, that if the user specification means what the user wants from the software. For example, he wants a tax calculation software, then system analyst will convert that into technical specification, meaning he will convert what the user wants into arithmetical and logical instructions for the programmer. For example, if the user says that he wants tax calculation software, system analyst has to design rules regarding tax calculation. He needs to design the rules that if the taxable income is less than this, then tax equals to 0. If taxable income is this, then tax equals to this. If then rules like this he needs to make. Who will make that? System analyst has to make that. So that rules which the system analyst will make will be called as technical design. It will be the part where he will translate user requirements into the technical specifications. Yeah. Internal auditors participation. Well, system analyst will also take suggestions from the internal auditor, because he will better know that what all mistakes are possible to happen. Program testing, user testing is basically testing the software. Program testing was a testing part of the software. User testing was testing the whole software unified. Further, programming management controls. Programming management controls were controls to produce or acquire a program. Produce program means to make a customized software. Acquire program means to get a ready-made software. It has 6 major phases, that is planning, designing, controlling, coding, testing, operation and maintenance. Wealth control phase running in parallel for all these phases. So control phase will last continuously throughout all these phases. So program development life cycle. Planning means to decide what programs do we need. Controlling will last throughout all the phases. Controlling will involve checking the task progress. Well, checking the task progress might happen if you are producing a customized software. But if you are acquiring a ready-made software, then control would involve control over the software acquisition to ensure that the software is authentic, accurate, and complete. Yes, so generally while producing program, you need to check the task progress. Keep asking the programmer what is the progress of the program development and all. And while acquiring a ready-made software, you need to ensure that it is authentic, accurate, and complete. Designing is to determine what is expected from the program. Designing is basically what the system analyst does. Coding is what the programmer does. He will convert the design into the instructions, arithmetic, into the machine language, computer language and all. Testing is basically checking whether the software is working perfectly or not. Under that also unit testing, integration testing, whole of program testing. Unit testing was to test individual modules. Integration testing is to check integration between the group of modules, like one module integrated with other module. And whole of program testing means to test the entire software as a whole. Yes, whole of program testing will be testing the whole program as a whole. Operation and maintenance is about the after sales service. Repair maintenance, adaptive maintenance, perfective maintenance. Repair maintenance means that if the program contains errors, they need to be corrected. Adaptive maintenance means to adapt to the changing requirements. Like when there is change in the GST laws, you need to adapt to the changing requirements. You need to make changes in the software also. And perfective maintenance, neither there is any error nor there are any changes in the requirements of law, but still you say update the software, improvise the software just for improvement. That is called as perfective maintenance. Next, data resource management controls. Data resource management is about managing the data. Now, who manages the data? There is one person whom I have appointed to do that. That person was called as a database administrator. It is his job to ensure that the data is available to the user when it is needed, where it is needed, in the form in which it is needed. And he has to ensure that it is possible to modify the data easily. In short, whenever any employee of my company does not get the data he wants, whom will he contact? Well, he will contact this guy, database administrator. He has to ensure that the data is made available to the persons whenever they need. Yeah. Quality assurance management is to ensure the quality of the systems are maintained. Okay, that you can read. Security management is just like environmental, physical access control, logical access controls and all. Under that, two important terms we had learned, that is disaster recovery plan, business continuity plan. Disaster recovery plan, which is basically after a disaster happens. So when a disaster strikes, after the disaster, how would you recover back from the disaster? Say maybe due to the disaster your computers are lost, your data is lost, everything is lost. Then you should have some plan that once everything is lost, how will you come back on your feet? That can be called as disaster recovery plan. Yes, it might contain four parts: emergency plan, backup plan, recovery plan, test plan. And adequate insurance must also be taken against the disaster and all. Okay. Business continuity plan is kind of before the disaster happens. It is like a plan that you have already made, that if at all there is a disaster, then what will you do? Like if at all there is a disaster, what will you do to ensure continuity of your business? Yes, how would you ensure business continuity in case of disaster? For example, if my say AC stops working, I have another spare AC lying here which I can immediately fit and continue using it. That is like a business continuity plan to ensure that my business continues in spite of some disaster. Operations management controls are controls related to daily running of the software, day-to-day routine running of the software, that you can read. Next, application controls and their categories. Application controls are the controls implemented in the software. Application controls are the controls implemented in the software such that these are the restrictions done by the software itself. Now, any software can have these different components. Any software will have input, process and output. So my application controls are also under these categories: input controls, process controls, and output controls. But apart from that, my uh, apart from that, my application controls will also have access controls regarding whom to allow access, whom not to allow access, communication controls, which is pertaining to communication, like input needs to be communicated to the process, so communication controls. After processing is done, output is generated, output might be stored in the database, so we have database controls also. In short, total 6 different components under application controls, starting with the first one, access controls, also called as boundary controls. Basically, access control is to prevent unauthorized access. Simplest way, the access control is to prevent unauthorized access. Tell me, how to prevent unauthorized access? Well, the easiest way, the most common method to prevent unauthorized access would be by using passwords. The use of passwords is the most common way to prevent unauthorized access, but within your topic of access control here, there are 3 important terms that I had discussed: identification, authentication, authorization. Identification is to check identity of the user at the time of logging. So that is like a login password. Authentication is to again check the identity. It is to check the authenticity of the resources that users wish to employ. Generally, authentication is checked at the point of access, at the point of entering transaction. So identification is checked when you log into the software. Authentication is checked when you try to enter a transaction, like transaction password. And authorization is to restrict actions taken by the user to a set of authorized actions only. So even after proving your identity and authenticity, still your transaction might be rejected because you are not yet authorized to do that transaction. Yeah. Anyways, all that can be checked using cryptography, which is another name for encryption. Passwords or PIN numbers or ID cards or biometric devices, these are all methods how access controls can be implemented. Input controls next. Input controls is to ensure the accuracy and completeness of data that is input. Input means the data that you type. So input controls are to ensure accuracy and completeness of the input data. Example, well, while entering name, say on some website, when they ask you to enter your name, while entering the name field, it will not allow me to type a number. This is basically an input control. In fact, while typing the name field, even if I type the number, that number might not even appear on the screen, meaning that number was rejected immediately as I type. Well, this comes under validation controls of input. So within input control, you'll have validation controls which will reject invalid data like this. But the same validation control you will further also see in processing controls. Well, under processing controls, when you have validation control, it has the same thing, but it will be rejecting your invalid data, but the rejection does not happen at the time of input. Rejection happens due to processing after processing. For example, in the name field, number was not allowed, but in the user ID field, number will be allowed. In the user ID field, yes, number will be allowed, but in the user ID field, if I write just the name Devang, it was rejected. If I write Devang with number 29, again it was rejected. Remember, why did this rejection happen? Was it rejected because this is invalid input? No, input is not wrong, but then why was this rejected? Well, it was rejected because somebody else already had that same user ID. So how did the rejection happen? Understand, this rejection will happen after your computer will compare this user ID with all the other user IDs in its database. After it compares, after comparison, meaning after processing. So this Rejection. The second example, rejection. Rejection did not happen immediately as you type. Rejection happened after comparison, after processing. After processing, hence it comes under process controls. Yeah. Okay. Coming back here. So under input controls, you have certain categories like source document controls is to control the source document. Now source document is a document from which you get the input data. Input data like say purchase orders or invoices and all become your source documents. So access to that source documents should be restricted, because if somebody gets access to your purchase order, he might create a fake purchase transaction to a non-existent supplier. Non-existent supplier means say maybe fake supplier. He'll create a fake supplier and create a purchase order and siphon money out of the company. Okay, next, data coding controls. Data coding controls are basically data entry errors. Data entry like means basically typing mistakes. While typing something, if you make some mistakes, that is called as data typing mistakes or data entry errors. Data coding controls are the controls against that in typing mistakes. Well, different categories we had learned under that: transcription errors and transposition error. Transcription, under that, addition means extra character was added. Truncation means some character was by mistake not removed. Substitution means some character was substituted with some other character. Transposition error means the position of the alphabet's position of your typing was changed. Single transposition means two adjacent digits are reversed, while multiple transposition means two non-adjacent digits are reversed or transposed. That is your transposition error. Batch controls. Batch controls are the controls implemented while doing batch processing. But well, for that matter, we first required to discuss that what exactly does batch processing mean. Well, batch processing versus real-time processing difference. Batch processing is the type of processing where transactions are accumulated in a batch, then the entire batch is together sent for processing. While real-time processing means that whatever transactions are entered, that transactions are immediately processed as and when it is entered. So the transaction which is entered, as soon as the transaction is entered, it is immediately processed. That becomes your real-time processing. Yes, so batch processing, transactions are accumulated in a batch. Now this batch which is accumulated, before that batch is sent for processing, that entire batch is subject to some controls like control totals. So batch controls are the controls implemented over the entire batch, under which there'll be three different types of control totals that are maintained. Financial totals will be the totals made of money amounts. Hash totals are the totals made for any other codes like serial number, ID numbers, etc. And document record counts is the count, it is the number of transactions, number of documents in a record. Validation controls, example I gave you, to prevent invalid data, like in the name field number was not allowed. That was an example for validation controls, to detect errors in the transaction data before the data is processed. Before data is processed, and it is basically to detect invalid data. Under validation controls, you had examples for field interrogation, record interrogation, file interrogation. The word field means column, record means rows. Now field interrogation, some examples you had: limit check is to check against predefined limits, like month will be up to 12 only, 1 to 12. Date or day will be 1 to 30 or 31 only, that is like limit check. Check against predefined limit. Picture check, to check whether invalid characters are entered or not. Certain places such invalid characters are rejected. Valid code check, to check against predetermined transaction codes. Record interrogation is with respect to row. Reasonableness check, to check whether value entered in the row is reasonable or not. Valid sign, plus minus sign. Sequence check, to check whether all transactions are recorded or not. And file interrogation includes version usage, check whether the version of file you are using is correct or not. Labeling is basically naming the file, putting proper labels on the file. File security, data file security, you check, all that comes under validation controls. Next set of controls, communication controls. Now communication happens from the sender to the receiver. Now when the communication is happening from sender to the receiver, during that communication some controls are needed. Now who will be sender, who will be receiver? Well, sender to receiver might be input device to the CPU within one computer, or sender to receiver might be client to server in case of a network. Yep. Within communication controls, first there are physical components control. Like physical components, the devices that are used in communication should be properly maintained. Line error control. Line error control says that whenever data is transmitted, there might be error. Then line error control is to detect and correct that error. Basically, transmission error means that sender will send something and receiver will receive something else. Server will send, client will receive, but there is an error in the communication. So in that case, there is line error controls. It will be a system to detect and correct these errors. Flow control. Remember, for flow control, I had given you example like this. Like when you are accessing YouTube, then YouTube server is sending data to your computer. So YouTube is the server, your computer is the client, but YouTube server will send data at a very fast rate. Your computer, you are watching a video will not be played so fast. So meanwhile, the data which comes from YouTube, it will be stored in a place called as buffer memory. Buffer memory is the memory, it is the storage where this waiting data is stored. So when server is sending data to your computer very fast, the data is saved in your buffer memory. CPU will take the data from the buffer memory to process. But sometimes what happens is that the server is sending data very fast. And if that happens, the server is dumping data to your computer so fast that your buffer memory gets full. Say the YouTube video that you wish to watch is of 20 GB size, but your buffer memory contains only 2 GB space. So anything that the YouTube will send after 2 GB will be lost because your buffer memory does not have the space. So to prevent that, there is flow control. What happens is that under flow controls will prevent the server YouTube from swamping the computer, and as a result data is lost. It is like when the server is sending data to the client computer will implement flow control. It will tell the server to stop sending data once the buffer memory is full. Client computer will tell the server to stop sending the data once the buffer memory is full. It will again continue sending data when I have space relieved in my buffer memory. Yeah. That is your flow control, and generally it happens because two nodes can differ in terms of the speed. Yeah. Link control means your line error control, the earlier one, and flow control, this one. It means line error control and flow control between two nodes. Like in a network, from the sender to receiver, there might be nodes involved in between. Then line error control, flow control between the nodes was called as link control. Channel access control were the controls when two different nodes are competing to use the same communication channel. If two nodes are accessing the same communication channel, if two computers in a network both want to use internet, then they will have to compete. At the time of such competition, there will be channel access control to prevent them from fighting. Further, processing controls. Processing is the main part of any computer. Processing controls contain who does the processing? Well, CPU does the processing, central processor, and that CPU contains arithmetical logical unit, control unit. Now CPU contains control unit, ALU, and registers, three things. Processor controls are the controls pertaining to the CPU related controls. Four main types of controls under that we had learned. Error detection and correction. Well, processor, the CPU will itself perform error detection and correction. It might find three types of errors: transient error, intermittent errors, permanent error. For transient errors, they will disappear after a short time. Intermittent errors will reoccur periodically. For these two types of error, transient and intermittent, retry and re-execution might solve the problem. Retry matlab the CPU will do the process again. Re-execution means again it will do the process. Because of retry or re-execution, the error might be solved. But Permanent errors will be such that even retry re-execution does not work. In such case, the processor must halt and report the error. It's like I had given you example. It's like when you are doing some calculations. If you get a wrong answer, what will you do? You will try again. Again, you get a wrong answer, you try again. But even after 3-4 trials, you are still getting a wrong answer. Then you'll have to make it as a doubt and ask someone to solve your doubt. Yeah, that is exactly what happens here. Retry re-execution can resolve transient and intermittent errors. If you made a silly mistake, calculation mistake, then retry might solve your calculation mistake. But if you are conceptually wrong, then retry re-execution will not solve your answer, give you the answer. You will have to ask someone to clarify the concepts. That is like a permanent error where the processor will halt and report the error. Multiple execution states. Well, this was little technical concept. I told you that when CPU will do any processing, when CPU does the processing, it does not process the whole program continuously. Say VLC player, if you are processing, it will not process the whole program continuously. Rather, CPU will process the program in multiple stages. First, it will process few instructions of VLC, then it goes to Microsoft Word, process few instructions there, come back to VLC, go back to Microsoft Word, and so on. CPU keeps shifting between two programs or 20 programs at very high speed, such that you will feel that all these programs are running together. Well, this creates multitasking. This was what we had earlier called as multitasking. Because of this, you are able to run 20 programs at a time. Now when this happens, CPU performs multiple execution stages. You see that VLC program here was not, all instructions of VLC were not processed in one shot. Rather, few instructions were processed, then other instructions, then other instructions, then other instructions. Meaning, all instructions of VLC player were processed in 4 different stages here. You see that VLC player was processed in 4 different stages. If the VLC player gets processed in 4 different stages, every program gets processed in multiple stages like that. Yes, that is called as multiple execution states. But in such case, there has to be a control measure. There has to be a control measure regarding the number of breaks in execution of a program because of another program. How many times can the execution be interrupted? That has to be controlled. Because if that is not controlled, then it might happen that instead of splitting VLC into 4 parts, the CPU might split that into 40 parts. Well, if that happens, then processing will slow down. Yeah. So there has to be a control over the number of breaks and breaks in the execution of a program because of another program or operating system. It has to be controlled that which instruction can interrupt the CPU. Timing controls. Many times operating system might be stuck in an infinite loop. It keeps on processing the same instructions again and again. Then timing controls will give out an error and bring the CPU out from the loop. Component replication. Replication means duplication. Redundant means duplication. Many computer systems will contain redundant processor, means extra CPU, more than one CPU in your computer, so that better processing, faster processing can happen. Yep. Memory controls are basically controls pertaining to RAM. Virtual memory controls are also controls pertaining to virtual memory. Data processing controls involves a validation check. Again, validation check, but remember this time it was checking the validity not at the time of input, but checking the validity of the data that is being processed. In case of input controls, for validation controls, I give example for name field. But here under process controls validation, I give example of user ID. We already discussed that earlier. Further, database controls. Database controls basically whatever processing is done, that process, the output will be stored in the database. Database controls has update controls. First of all, update controls are mainly pertaining to adding or, just a minute. Yeah, sorry. Update control pertains to adding or editing the data. Adding or editing the data, like say any data is to be added or database transaction is to be edited, that comes under update control. I need to add a new student registration in my database, or I need to update phone number of a student in my database, that comes under update controls. Well, under that, sequence check, to check the correct sequence of processing, to check whether all transactions are processed in sequence or not. Ensure all records in the files are processed, yes. Process multiple transactions of a single record in correct order, like when there are more than one transactions to be recorded, then it should be done in the correct order. For example, for a purchase transaction, purchase order should come first, then say maybe purchase invoice should come, then say maybe receipt of goods should be recorded, then only payment of goods, payment of the invoice should be recorded. Yes, so for the same transaction, when there are multiple entries to be done, it should be in correct order. Maintain suspense account. Now over here, suspense account is not like a debit credit wala account over here refers to list. Maintain a suspense account list. While when doing mapping between master record and transaction record, there might be a mismatch. Now by this time you should know what is master data, transaction data. Master data is the data which is relatively common, permanent. Transaction data is the one which changes in every transaction. So if there is any mismatch between master record and transaction data, then such mismatch will be listed in the suspense account, such that later you come back to the list and resolve the problems. Yeah. Report controls. Report controls is pertaining to using the data. Look, update control was adding or editing the data. Report controls is like whatever data is existing, use the data to generate reports. Use the data to generate the reports. Under that, standing data. Well, standing data are, for example, say in case of salary calculation, you need to take hours into rate per hour, but that rate per hour is called as standing data, because this rate per hour will be common for every transaction. Like say if your rate of salary is say maybe 100 rupees per day or 100 rupees per hour, if the rate of salary of this employee is 100 per hour, then for every single day his rate will remain same 100 per hour. Every day hours will change, but the rate will remain the same. Standing data. Similarly, sales. While recording sales transactions, selling price per unit is the standing data, because same selling price per unit you are charging from all the customers. While doing interest calculation, interest rate is the standing data, because the same interest rate is being charged every month from the EMIs that you pay. Yeah. Now, this standing data should be carefully managed, because if there arises a mistake in that standing data, then not only one transaction but all transactions which are based on that standing data will go wrong. Yeah. So standing data should be periodically monitored and manually checked, and other methods like control totals should also be kept. Okay. Print run to run control totals. Yes, run to run totals during long process, control totals should be printed. Print suspense account entries so that somebody can take a look at those entries and resolve the suspense entries. Backup and recovery. Yes, regularly backup should be taken. Recovery is also done when needed. And the last one, output controls. Output refers to reports that are generated. Outputs refers to the reports that are generated. Well, reports should be confidential, and integrity of output should be maintained. Confidentiality, integrity of output should be maintained. These are the main requirements. Well, under that, storage of critical forms, like whatever pre-printed stationery you have. Pre-printed stationery, for example, invoice formats. Any such invoice format should be stored securely. Stored securely so that if anybody, wrong person, gets hands on my invoice formats, then they might make fake invoices and do transactions with that. Yep. Logging. Whenever output is generated, whom is the output given, who generated output, all that should be recorded in the log. Spooling. Spool is basically buffer memory. Spooling is another name for buffer memory. It is specifically buffer memory for print data. Now when you give a print command, then your printing instruction goes to the spool memory. From the spool memory, it is given to the printer. Yes. So spooling is also a feature with the outputs. User can continue working while the print operation is getting completed because the print operation happens from the spool memory. This spool memory should be secured. Controls over printing is like unauthorized printing should be prevented, unauthorized disclosure of information printed should be prevented and all. Okay. Report distribution and collection controls. Report distribution should be done immediately and it should be collected by the relevant person immediately. Plus it should be mentioned in the log. And retention controls refers to the duration for which the outputs should be retained. Whatever output is generated, it should be retained for a limited duration, after that duration, that output should be destroyed so that nobody can misuse that output. Done? Yes, that completes our application controls. So that completes my entire set of controls. Entire set of controls, important ones were logical access controls and this last one, application controls. Done? Yes? Okay. Okay, going further, we then discuss now information system auditing, IS auditing. But before I describe the details here, remember I had given you a general discussion regarding what is IS auditing. Information system auditing, how is it different from your routine auditing work? Well, remember this example. Say this example describes a purchase transaction. Purchase transaction happens like this, that purchase transaction initiates from the production manager. He will send material requisition note to the store manager. Store manager will send PRN, purchase requisition note, to the purchase or accounts manager, and they will send purchase order to the supplier. Against that, the supplier will supply materials to the store manager and supplier will send purchase invoice to the accounts manager. Against that invoice, accounts manager will then do the payment to the supplier. Yeah, at the time of delivering the materials, supplier will send a delivery note along with the material, and when the store manager receives the material, he will create a goods received note, GRN, goods receiving note he will create. These are the various documents that are involved here. Now, auditing in information systems says that instead of checking every single transaction, instead of checking each of these documents, IS audit says that you check the software. Remember, IS audit does not mean checking every transaction, rather it means checking the software. Checking the software because look, when a transaction happens, the final thing that happened at the end of transaction was payment. Yes, but auditor should check that the payment was not possible without purchase invoice. Purchase invoice was not possible without purchase order and GRN. In short, checking this entire list of transactions, checking this entire backward sequence of transactions is called as checking the audit trail. In case of IS audit, you don't check every transaction here. You don't check the purchase invoice for every payment done. Instead of checking each transaction, what you need to do is check the software controls. IS audit means to check the controls in the software itself. Instead of checking individual transactions, you check the software controls such that if the software has restrictions that payment cannot be recorded without recording invoice cannot be recorded without recording purchase order and GRN, if such restrictions already exist in the software, then the auditor need not check every single transaction. He can then rely on the system. Yes, this was called as IS audit. So remember, IS audit generally does not focus on checking each transaction. No, instead you check that whether software has enough controls or not. Why? Because if the software does not permit payment without recording invoice, then you don't need to check every single payment, that whether it has an invoice or not. You just need to check whether software is allowing the payment without invoice or not. If the software does not allow payment without invoice, then definitely every single payment done in the software will be definitely after invoice only. You can be sure of that because you have checked the software. Yeah, that is basically IS audit. Now within IS audit, the theory that you are that you're supposed to learn was these. First, there were objectives of the auditing, general objectives of auditing. Under that, two important ones only I'll discuss: system effectiveness, system efficiency. System effectiveness is to check whether whether the system is able to meet the user requirements or not. For example, if I give you a salary calculation software, then system effectiveness is to check whether that salary software is calculating correct salary or not, whether it is calculating salary and doing it correctly or not. While system efficiency means to optimize the use of resources. For example, efficiency means to check that whether this salary software is consuming optimum RAM or too much RAM or not. Yeah, that was called as efficiency. Effectiveness is to check whether the user requirements are fulfilled or not, and efficiency means to check the consumption of resources in doing that. Need for audit: why do I need to audit information system? To check data loss, to prevent incorrect decisions, to prevent unauthorized access, because value of the hardware software personnel are very critical to the company. To prevent high cost of computer error, to maintain privacy, and systems reliability of the systems cannot be guaranteed. No matter how strong systems you have, even if you are using an iPhones might also get hung up, iPhones might also hang, iPhones might also be hacked. Yes, so no matter how reliable system you are using, still reliability cannot be guaranteed. Anyways, tools for IS audit. Tools for IS audit, we learned various different audit tools for doing the auditing work. For concurrent or continuous audit, look, there can be two methods of doing audit. Year ending audit is like a batch processing. At the end of the year, you come to the company and check the books of accounts. Or during the year audit, it's like real time processing. You do the checking of transactions during the transactions are being entered. Yes, that is like a real time process. But if the auditor wants to do during the year audit real time auditing, well, auditor cannot be present in the company throughout the year. So what the auditor will do is, instead of himself being present in the company throughout the year, auditor will put his auditing software in your company, so that I am not available permanently in your company, but my software is there in your company. Whenever anything wrong happens in the company, my software will take a note of that and report to me whenever I come. Yes, these softwares are your auditing tools. These softwares are also called computer aided audit techniques. Under that, we had learned various such softwares here. The first one, snapshots, says that it is a software built into the system, built into your system. Your matlab company ka system, client ka system. I am the auditor, you are the company whom I have to audit. Then my software will be integrated with your software. My auditing software snapshots is integrated with your information system at those points where material processing occurs. Material means significant processing occurs. My software snapshots will take images of the flow of transaction. Snapshots will take images of the transactions, important transactions, and it will report those transactions to me. It is important to locate the snapshot points based on the materiality of the transactions. Okay? Integrated test facility means that I will create a dummy entity. In your software, I will create a dummy entity and I will enter transactions in that dummy entity to check whether your software is processing the transactions correctly or not. If you are using a salary calculation software, I want to check whether the software calculates salary correctly or not. Then I will enter dummy transactions of salary calculation to check whether the software is doing correct or not. That is, test data against that dummy entity only. System control audit review file, SCARF. Well, this is also similar to snapshots because this is also integrated with your information system. It involves embedding, means integrating my auditing software with your host application to provide continuous monitoring of your transactions. Now this time my software will continuously monitor all your transactions, and information collected is written on a special audit file. Auditor will come and examine only this file. Continuous and intermittent simulation. The word simulate means duplicate. The simulation is a software which will duplicate Simulation is my software which will duplicate the kind of processing your software does. So this method is used only when your company is using a DBMS system. When your company is using a DBMS system, only then this method might work. What happens is that when your DBMS will get a transaction, it will also pass that transaction to the CIS. CIS is my software, auditor's software. My software will replicate the application system processing. My software will replicate the same kind of processing that your software does. And say if your software is a salary calculation software, then my software will also calculate salary, your software will calculate salary, and this CIS will compare both the answers. If on comparison, if discrepancies, difference exists, then it means that your software is wrong. I can find mistakes in your software by doing same calculation in my software. That discrepancies are written to a separate exception log file so that the auditor will come and then check these files. And the last one, audit hooks. Audit hooks is basically a software used to flag suspicious transactions. The word flag means mark, highlight. Look, if I found that in your company there is one particular type of transaction which is generally suspicious, then I can use this audit hooks software to flag, to mark all such transactions. Like say they are given example of some insurance company, that there is some problem in the insurance company software that if the policy holder applies for an address change, then there arises some error in the system. What I did was I used the audit hooks software, and I will tell the audit hooks software to flag all the address change requests. I will tell the audit hook software to flag all the requests of address changes. So all the past transactions where the customer applied for address change, even the future address change request will be flagged by the audit hook software. Next time when I come to the company, I don't need to check all the transactions. I will only check the transactions flagged by the audit hooks software. Yes. So audit hooks will tag records so that you investigate only these tagged records for detecting fraud. In fact, audit hooks, when audit hooks are employed, auditors can be informed of questionable transactions as soon as they occur. So even future transactions, in future also, whenever there is an address changing request that comes from the customer, then audit hook software will flag this transaction, reported to the auditor. Yeah, this does not mean that all the address change transactions are fraud, but if I found fraud in one of the address change transaction, then audit hook software will flag all the address change transactions. Flag means just mark. Auditor will come and check these transactions. Yeah. Okay, so these are the softwares that are used by the auditors and all. Okay, going further, audit trail. Audit trail was the sequence of transactions that you check. Well, under that, two important terms I define: accounting audit trail, operations audit trail. Accounting audit trail is to check the things that will update the database. That is adding things to the database, adding data to the database. Operations audit trail is to check the resource consumption. For example, if it is a salary calculation software, then accounting audit trail means to check whether the salary was calculated correctly or not. While operations audit trail is to check that whether the software has done optimum utilization of resources or not, whether the software is consuming too much of the RAM or it is using optimum RAM, that you check comes under operations audit trail. In other words, accounting audit trail means to check the effectiveness. Operations audit trail is to check the efficiency. We did that earlier, same thing again here. Then audit trail objectives. Why do I need to check these transactions? Well, to detect unauthorized access, to reconstruct events. This was like reconstructing the past events, and to set the personal accountability. Who is accountable for what mistakes, that you can set over here, that is personal accountability. Implementing audit trail. Okay. Now under that, there are separate topics regarding audit trails in various different controls that we did. Auditing environmental controls, auditing physical access controls, auditing logical access controls. All of them I am not revising, anyways I had not discussed. These Most of these points were repetitions from the earlier topics what we did. Yeah, within logical access controls, within auditing logical controls, some of the points that were new I will just show you again, like this one. Determine if any process exists to identify closed or dormant accounts. If there are any unused accounts, then your auditor should determine that what are the unused accounts. In fact, auditor should check that whether company has any method to detect the unused accounts, because unused accounts might be prone to frauds. Auditor should also check whether there are any shared user accounts. Now, what is the problem with shared accounts? Well, if two employees are sharing the same user ID, that is called as a shared account. Now, if two employees are sharing the same user ID, then it will be difficult to find out that which employee entered the transaction. Now, if there is a fraud, it will be difficult to find out that employee 1 or employee 2 who did the fraud. Accountability cannot be determined. Yes, there is a problem here. Identify the purpose of system account. System account is like the admin account. Auditor should check that which or how many system accounts are created and why is this guy given a system account. That also you should question. Examine the employee termination process. When employee leaves the company, check that his termination process is done properly and check whether the accounts management team has been informed about the termination, because when this employee is leaving the company, then his ID password should be removed from the company database. Determine if any internal reviews of the terminated accounts are also performed. Like when an employee leaves the company, after he leaves, you should perform a review. Company should review that what transactions this person had done just before leaving the company. It is very likely that majority of the fraud transactions are done by the employees who are about to leave the company. Yeah. Then there was this point regarding internet points of presence. In general, this part here said that auditor should check the internet presence of the company, that what all internet facilities the company has and what does the internet talk about my company, what does the internet talk about this company, that also we should check. To discover the organization's internet presence, you search on the search engines like Google and Yahoo that what does the search engine say about my company. Also see social networking sites like Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, that what are people talking about my company here. Online sales site, Amazon, Flipkart and all, see that what product reviews your company is getting here. Verify contact information for your domain names. Domain names is basically website name. See that your contact information on the website is correct or not, and determine why does the organization have online capabilities, that why does the company have website, why does the company need email, why is this employee given internet access. All that you should check, that is internet, checking the internet points of presence. Then managerial controls and their audit trail, that you can read, almost repetition of my previous discussion, and application controls and their audit trail is also repetition. Under this you are given various examples that what all things the auditor should check while doing boundary controls, while doing input controls and all. It's a long list of things that you should check. Well, you don't need to memorize each of those points here, you just give it one reading and you can create your own points. Yeah. And then the last part of the chapter, in my opinion, not very important, but few things that we had done here was, say, first, changes in the topic was regarding organization structure and responsibilities. Organization structure basically means how the different authorities in my company are organized, who is the superior, who is the inferior, that entire tree form, inverted tree structure, hierarchy in my company is called as organization structure. And the first thing here, changes in the organization structure. It says that what all things might require changes to be done in my organization structure. Say short-term, long-term objectives. In case of some companies might move departments from one executive to another, so that the departments that were once far from each other can become close to each other. Okay. Market conditions. Maybe if there is some very tough competition in the market, then a department might be shifted from one employee to the other employee. That is again change in the structure. Regulation, maybe government has appointed a leader or director in my company. Available talent, if someone leaves the company, then his department might be given to me. That is again change in the organization structure. Individual roles and responsibilities, ठीक है, not revising. Job titles and job description. Job title is a designation given to an employee, while job description is basically what that job is supposed to do. Job title is the designation name, but generally the designation name might not convey a clear meaning about what work he is supposed to do. That work will be written in the job description. Now, in this topic, they are talking about having consistency in the job titles. Consistency in job titles, meaning company A, company B, company C. In different companies, the same designation should have the same meaning. Generally, it doesn't happen. But if it is the same sector company, then yes, designation will have the same meaning. If you remember, I had given you example regarding banking company versus say big four CA firms. Like the designation manager in banking company is almost bottom level, but the same designation manager in Deloitte PwC is quite at a top level. So the word manager is a very confusing term. This point here says that there has to be consistency in the designation names. Well, frankly, there does not exist any such consistency in different companies. But in the companies of the same sector, yes, consistency is existing. Manager at IDBI Bank, manager at ICICI Bank, manager at say HDFC Bank, all of them will be having the same meaning or same level of work. Yeah. So that consistency will help in the following way. If the job titles are consistent, it will have these benefits. It will help in recruitment because the prospective candidates can easily understand which position are they applying for. Compensation baselining. If the designations are consistent, then the prospective employees can also compare the salary of this designation in different companies. Look, I cannot compare salary of a manager at IDBI with salary of manager in PwC, but I can compare salary of manager in IDBI with salary of manager in ICICI. So because it is the same designation, I can compare the salary. Compensation means salary, baselining means comparing. Career advancement. Well, because the job titles are consistent, an employee can have a better idea about his career growth. He can have a better idea that I'm joining this bank today as say a cash manager. After that, further I can become branch manager, area manager, this manager, that manager. He can understand the entire career growth that he might have in this company. That is like career advancement. Then you had some examples of job titles that you can read again. I'm not revising. And last part was a topic regarding segregation of duties. Segregation of duties says that for better security purpose, any duties that are supposed to be done will be segregated between two people. It is basically involve the coordination of two or more authorized individuals in order to do a task. That is called separation of duties. Single person will not possess the privileges of doing the entire work. For example, if I want to get a transaction done, then the person who initiates the transaction will be different from the person who approves the transaction. If the same person initiates and approves, then it is risky. He might do fraud. So the person who initiates the transaction cannot approve it. The person who can approve it cannot initiate the transaction. So unless both these people work, the transaction will not be done. This was called as segregation of duties. Examples. Same thing, transaction authorization requiring two persons to approve a transaction, or split the custody of high value assets. Like say password can be split into half. One half is assigned to two persons, other half is then assigned to two other persons. So total, unless these four persons come together, the password cannot be used. Periodic reviews. Yes, whatever segregation you have done, you should periodically review your segregation of duties. Anyways, that completes our chapter number 3. Chapter number 3, as I said, was the longest chapter of your subject, and this session was revising the entire chapter number 3. Next session will be starting later. Next session will be revising the next chapter, chapter number 4. Yeah, that's all for now. Next session, chapter 4, we will be revising. Thank you very much.